Patricia seized the neckline of Rosanna's worn dress and pulled. The fabric tore across her shoulder as hundreds of wolves watched. Rosanna crossed her arms over her chest, begging her to stop. Then one quiet command froze the clearing. Alpha King Cameron Livingston walked straight toward them, removed his royal cloak, and wrapped it around the Wolfless servant himself. No one understood why the most powerful alpha in the territories looked at Rosanna as if something far more dangerous had just been revealed. Chapter 1. The Unwanted Shadow. Kindness will always defeat cruelty, and love will find you when you least expect it. Those were the words Rosanna's foster mother used to whisper to her every night before sleep, gently stroking her hair with fingers that somehow never felt quite warm enough. But when you were an orphaned, wolfless girl surviving on scraps inside an alpha's mansion, scrubbing floors while his beautiful daughters prepared for the Luna selection, you learned something very different. Kindness was often a privilege reserved for those powerful enough to afford it. And love. Love was a game that seemed designed for girls like Rosanna to lose before they were ever allowed to play. Before sunrise, the Silvercrest Pack territory smelled of pine and approaching rain. Rosanna Friedman pressed both calloused hands against the cold marble floor of the Alpha's mansion and scrubbed in slow circles, the motion so familiar that she barely had to think about it anymore. Her knees hurt. They always hurt now. Years spent kneeling on hard floors had made pain part of her daily routine. You missed a spot. Rosanna didn't need to raise her head. She knew that voice. Alicia Wheeler stood above her. The Alpha's eldest daughter had golden hair, a powerful wolf, flawless features, and the effortless cruelty of someone who had never once been told she couldn't have what she wanted. There. Alicia extended one perfectly manicured finger toward a patch of marble that shone just as brightly as the rest. I can still see dirt. She looked down at Rosanna with open disgust. Honestly, Rosanna, if you can't even clean a floor properly, what exactly are you useful for? Rosanna bit the inside of her cheek and scrubbed the imaginary stain. The taste of blood touched her tongue. She had learned years ago that arguing only made punishment worse. Within the hierarchy of Silvercrest, she existed somewhere below the Omegas and slightly above the furniture. She was an orphan. Wolfless. A charity case Alpha Douglas Bray had brought into his home after her parents were killed in a rogue attack when she was 5. Charity. That was the word he had used. It was also the word everyone else used when they wanted her to remember what she owed them. On her 8th birthday, instead of receiving cake or presents, Rosanna had been handed a bucket and cleaning cloths. That was when she truly understood what Silvercrest expected from its charity cases. Mother wants you in her chambers as soon as you're finished here, Alicia said. She turned toward the ornate mirror along the hallway and admired her reflection, adjusting herself until the pale morning light caught the silver threads woven through her dress. The Luna selection begins in 3 days. Alicia smiled at herself. 3 days, Rosanna. Can you imagine? Rosanna couldn't. More importantly, she wouldn't allow herself to. The Luna selection occurred only once every 10 years. Unmated she-wolves from packs across the Northern Territories would gather and compete for the chance to become the chosen mate of Alpha King Cameron Livingston, the most powerful werewolf born in 6 generations. Stories about Cameron were everywhere. They said he could shift into wolf form within a heartbeat. They said that at 19, he had destroyed an entire rogue force of 50 wolves by himself. They said he wanted a Luna strong enough to stand at his side while he united the divided packs beneath one banner. People said many things about Cameron Livingston. None of those stories involved wolfless orphan servants who spent their lives on their knees scrubbing marble. I can't imagine it, Rosanna answered quietly. That was the truth. Alicia laughed. The sound reminded Rosanna of glass breaking. Of course you can't. Alicia looked down at her. The selection is for she-wolves with breeding, power, worth. She flicked one hand dismissively toward Rosanna. Not, whatever you are. The insult landed exactly where Alicia intended. Rosanna had heard different versions of those words her entire life. They still hurt. She was 17. Her first shift should have happened years ago. By now, she should have felt a wolf awaken somewhere beneath her skin. She should have transformed. She should have taken her place within the pack. Instead, nothing had happened. Every other teenager around her had shifted and found their position within Silvercrest, while Rosanna remained stubbornly and inexplicably human. "I'll finish here and report to Luna Patricia immediately," Rosanna said evenly. Alicia's eyes sharpened. "Luna Patricia." Rosanna looked up. "You will address my mother properly. Just because she permits you to live beneath our roof does not mean you have earned familiarity with her." Rosanna lowered her gaze again. "Of course, my apologies, Luna Patricia." Satisfied, Alicia walked away in a cloud of expensive perfume. Rosanna listened until the footsteps disappeared down the corridor. Only then did she sit back on her heels and lower her forehead against her knees. One moment. She would allow herself exactly one moment to feel tired. Then she would stand again. The mansion was already waking around her. Omega servants moved through their morning routines. Metal pans clanged faintly from the kitchen. From somewhere farther away came the low voice of Alpha Douglas speaking inside his study. Silvercrest was one of the largest packs in the Northern Territories, more than 300 wolves strong, and its Alpha's mansion displayed that power everywhere. Imported marble covered the floors. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead like frozen waterfalls. Tapestries displayed 12 generations of Silvercrest victories and glory. Rosanna had personally cleaned nearly every inch of it. She forced herself upright despite the ache in her knees. Then she collected the bucket and cloths. Gray water sloshed against the bucket's sides as she carried it toward the servant's wing. She would empty it, rinse everything, then present herself before Luna Patricia with her head properly lowered and her expectations even lower. This was her life. It had always been her life. The servant's wing might as well have belonged to a completely different house. There was no marble there, only plain wooden floors, no tapestries, no chandeliers. The walls were almost bare. Most of the workers were Omegas, although several humans from a nearby town had also been hired to cook and clean. Everyone moved efficiently, quietly, like people who understood exactly how much space they were permitted to occupy. As Rosanna passed the kitchen entrance, Colleen Chase, the head cook, caught her arm. Colleen was older, and years of worry seemed permanently carved into her face. "Whatever Patricia wants, agree." Rosanna stopped. Colleen lowered her voice. "Don't argue. Don't explain yourself. Bow your head and say, 'Yes, Luna.' What does she want?" Colleen tightened her grip. "The selection." Rosanna's stomach sank. "She's been impossible all week. Alicia and Celeste are both attending, and Patricia is convinced one of them can attract the Alpha King. You know what she becomes like when she wants something." Rosanna knew very well. Luna Patricia Bray Costa had married Alpha Douglas 20 years earlier in a political alliance that strengthened both their packs. At 42, she remained strikingly beautiful. But hers was the beauty of a predator. Sharp, controlled, calculating. Patricia had never wanted Rosanna inside her home. She had made that clear almost from the beginning. Alpha Douglas had insisted on taking Rosanna in after the rogue attack. It had been perhaps the only truly kind act Rosanna had ever received from him, or perhaps it had merely been stubbornness. Whatever his reason, Patricia had made Rosanna repay that act every day since. "I'll be careful," Rosanna promised. Colleen released her. "You always are." Her expression remained worried. "Doesn't seem to help much, does it?" No, it didn't. Luna Patricia occupied most of the mansion's eastern second-floor wing. Rosanna climbed the servants' staircase because she was forbidden from using the grand staircase. She emerged into a corridor lined with portraits of former Silvercrest Alphas. Every painted face seemed to possess the same hard eyes, the same certainty that the world existed beneath them. Patricia's sitting room door was open. Rosanna knocked softly against the frame. Enter. Patricia sat before her vanity. Even from behind, Rosanna could see tension in her shoulders. Her blonde hair carried only the slightest traces of silver, and years of strict diet and training had preserved her figure. She did not turn. You took your time. My apologies, Luna. I came as quickly as I could. Not quickly enough. Patricia's eyes met Rosanna's through the mirror. Cold, assessing. The Luna selection begins in 3 days. Yes, Luna. My daughters will represent Silvercrest. This is the opportunity of their lives. Do you understand what that means? Yes, Luna. I don't believe you do. Patricia rose. Her silk robe whispered over the floor as she turned. Cameron Livingston will select his mate from among the gathered she-wolves. Whichever pack produces his chosen Luna will gain influence beyond anything we currently possess. She moved closer. If he chooses Alicia or Celeste, Silvercrest becomes one of the most important packs in the entire Northern Territories. Rosanna remained silent. Patricia rarely asked questions because she wanted answers. Everything I've worked for could be decided over the next several days. Then Patricia's gaze sharpened. Which brings us to you. Rosanna felt the air change. Patricia slowly circled her. You have been a thorn in my side since Douglas dragged you into this house. A charity case, a burden, a permanent reminder that my husband has an unfortunate weakness for strays. Rosanna kept breathing, slowly, carefully. I tolerated you because Douglas demanded it, and because, at the very least, you can be made useful through menial work. The CA. Patricia stopped directly in front of her. The selection is being held in Royal Pack territory. It is a 3-day journey. Rosanna listened. My daughters will require an attendant, someone to handle their luggage, prepare their clothing, style their hair, arrange their jewelry, make certain they look flawless every time they stand before the Alpha King. Understanding struck Rosanna. You want me to travel with them? Patricia's expression hardened. I want you to serve them. This is not a holiday. You will work every moment you are needed. You will sleep with the servants. You will eat after your betters. And unless one of my daughters requires you, you will make yourself invisible. Patricia leaned closer. If you do anything, to embarrass my daughters or Silvercrest, I will make whatever remains of your miserable life so painful that you will beg me to send you away. Fear moved through Rosanna, but beneath it was another emotion, something unexpected, dangerously close to hope. 3 days away from this mansion, 3 days somewhere she had never been, 3 days where her world might contain something besides floors, buckets, insults, and silence. I understand, Luna. Rosanna bowed her head. I will serve your daughters to the best of my ability. Patricia narrowed her eyes. See that you do. She returned toward the vanity. We leave tomorrow at dawn. Pack only what you absolutely need. There will be no space for luxuries. Then she looked at Rosanna again. And remember your place. Rosanna's fingers curled at her sides. You are going as a servant, nothing else. Do not begin imagining that because you happen to be near the selection, it somehow includes you. Patricia's smile was thin. Girls like you do not receive fairy tale endings. Of course not, Luna. Patricia dismissed her. Rosanna left before the woman could add another command. Her heartbeat accelerated as she descended the servants' staircase. 3 days. She knew the journey would not be pleasant. Nothing involving Patricia's daughters ever was. But serving Alicia and Celeste somewhere unfamiliar still sounded better than another week trapped inside the same soul-crushing routine. The rest of the day disappeared into preparation. Alicia and Celeste had new dresses for the selection, and every piece of their existing wardrobes also had to be considered. Rosanna spent hours folding satin and silk into enormous trunks, while the sisters argued about which gowns might best attract the Alpha King. Neither acknowledged Rosanna unless they wanted something. Not that one. It makes my hips look wide. Pack the diamond earrings. No, not those. Mother's diamonds. Yes, Those. If you wrinkle this dress, you'll regret it. Rosanna nodded. Yes, Lady Alicia. Yes, Lady Celeste. Her hands remained steady, even when exhaustion made them tremble. This kind of cruelty was familiar. She knew how to survive familiar things. Night finally settled over the mansion. The halls grew quiet. Rosanna returned to her tiny room in the servants' wing. It was barely larger than a closet. A narrow bed occupied most of the floor. One small window overlooked the pack's training grounds. Rosanna owned almost nothing. Several worn changes of clothing. A wooden comb her mother had given her shortly before the rogue attack. It was one of the few memories she still possessed of the woman who had given birth to her. And a small leather journal, where she wrote whenever loneliness became too heavy to carry silently. Everything fit inside a worn cloth bag. Packing took less than 5 minutes. Then Rosanna sat on the bed. For just a little while, she allowed herself to imagine the selection. Royal Pack territory was legendary. Forests untouched by human expansion. Mountains high enough to cut into the sky. A residence so vast that Silvercrest's mansion supposedly looked modest beside it. Hundreds of she-wolves from dozens of packs. Ancient ceremonies. Music. Dancing. And Cameron Livingston at the center of everything. The Alpha King. Rosanna had never seen him. Very few wolves outside the royal pack had. He rarely left his own territory unless pack disputes or rogue threats required his presence. Everything Rosanna knew came from rumors. Tall, impossibly handsome, cold, ruthless, fair, unforgiving, a leader who inspired absolute loyalty. Certainly not the type of wolf who would ever notice someone like her. Patricia's words echoed again. Girls like you do not receive fairy tale endings. Rosanna knew that. But maybe she didn't need an ending. Maybe 3 days of something different would be enough. 3 days seeing a world beyond Silvercrest. 3 days in a place where her parents' deaths were not the first thing everyone remembered about her. 3 days where she might simply look at something beautiful. Rosanna lay back and stared at the ceiling. Eventually, sleep claimed her. She dreamed of endless forests, towering mountains. And somewhere among the shadows, a pair of eyes the color of molten gold watched her. When Rosanna woke the next morning, most of the dream had vanished. Only the feeling remained, the strange certainty that something important was approaching. She could not have known how close she was to the truth. Chapter 2. The Journey to Fate. Dawn spread gray and cold across Silvercrest territory. Rosanna had already been working for hours. She checked Alicia's luggage, then Celeste's. Then she checked everything again, because a forgotten ribbon or misplaced pair of earrings could become an excuse for punishment. Her fingers had gone numb in the morning chill. She said nothing. Luna Patricia watched every movement with sharp, merciless attention. Is everything loaded? Alpha Douglas stood near the lead carriage. At 45, he remained one of the strongest alphas in the Northern Territories. He had the heavy build of a warrior, dark hair threaded with gray, and scars that spoke of battles no one needed to describe. He had been kind to Rosanna once, the day he brought a terrified 5-year-old orphan home. After that, kindness slowly became indifference. It was almost as if showing Rosanna too much concern might create conflict with his mate, and Douglas had decided long ago which battles he preferred not to fight. Yes, Alpha, Rosanna answered, lowering her head. Everything Luna Patricia and your daughters requested has been packed. Douglas gave a brief grunt. Then he turned away. That was usually the full extent of their conversations now. Rosanna told herself it didn't hurt. She told herself many things. Rosanna. Celeste's voice cracked through the morning. The younger Alpha daughter stood in the mansion doorway with her arms folded. At 16, Celeste had the same golden hair and beautiful features as Alicia, but Alicia's cruelty was deliberate. Celeste's was impulsive, careless. Sometimes Rosanna thought that made it worse. Where is my blue shawl? Rosanna looked toward her. The cashmere one? Yes, the cashmere one. Yes, the cashmere one. I specifically told you to pack it. I did, Lady Celeste. It's in your second trunk. The smaller one? Yes. I don't care where it is. I want it now. I'm freezing, and I refuse to begin this journey uncomfortable. Rosanna's stomach tightened. The second trunk sat beneath 3 others in the supply carriage. Unloading everything, finding the shawl, then packing the carriage again would take at least 20 minutes. They were supposed to depart in 10. Of course, Lady Celeste, I'll get it. Rosanna had barely taken 2 steps before Patricia stopped her. Leave it. Celeste turned. Mother, we are already late. You can survive without a shawl for several hours. We stop at the Ironwood border for lunch. Rosanna can dig through your belongings then. But, enough, Celeste. Get inside the carriage. Celeste stared at Rosanna as though this entire inconvenience had somehow been deliberately arranged against her. Then she marched toward the main carriage. Alicia was already waiting inside, barely concealing her excitement. For the sisters, today marked the beginning of a fairy tale. A journey they believed might end with one of them becoming the Alpha King's Luna. Rosanna climbed into the servant's carriage. It was smaller and far less comfortable. Instead of upholstered seats, there were hard wooden benches. Supplies filled much of the remaining space. 5 other she-wolves were already inside, 3 Omega servants and 2 of Patricia's personal handmaids. Long road ahead, one of the handmaids muttered as Rosanna sat. She appeared to be in her 30s, with exhausted eyes and hands as calloused as Rosanna's. 3 days of trees and terrible roads. She looked at Rosanna. You ever leave Silvercrest territory before? No. The woman raised her eyebrows. Never? Rosanna shook her head. Well, you haven't missed much. One pack territory looks like the next. Trees, dirt, and wolves convinced they're better than everyone around them. The carriage lurched. Rosanna braced one hand against the wall. Through the narrow window, she watched the Silvercrest mansion retreat. The building that had defined almost every day of her life for 12 years became smaller, then smaller again. Finally, the trees swallowed it. Something inside Rosanna loosened. Not freedom. She wasn't foolish enough to call it that. But distance. For a little while, Patricia's house was behind her. That had to count for something. The first hours passed quietly. The servant's carriage followed the Alpha family along poorly maintained forest roads. Every rut shook Rosanna's bones. Every stone sent another jolt through the wooden bench. Her body soon ached. She didn't complain. Complaining had never improved anything. They entered neutral territory before midday. These buffer forests belonged to no single Alpha. At night, rogues and predators made them dangerous, but daylight travel along the main roads was considered reasonably safe. Royal Pack patrols guarded the routes during major events such as the selection. We're stopping, one Omega announced as the carriage slowed. Must be Ironwood. The Ironwood pack was smaller than Silvercrest, perhaps 100 wolves, but its territory sat along important trade routes. Its alpha, Desmond Schmidt, had built considerable prosperity around hospitality. Way stations offered food, rest, and supplies to traveling packs in exchange for reasonable payment. Rosanna stepped down from the carriage. Her legs protested after hours of sitting. The station was simple but welcoming. A broad timber structure with a covered porch. Smoke curled from several chimneys. The smell of roasting meat reached Rosanna. Her stomach growled loudly. She had been too busy preparing the carriages to eat breakfast. Rosanna. Alicia appeared beside her. Despite the journey, she somehow looked almost perfectly composed. Mother says you're to help Celeste and me change before lunch. We cannot greet Alpha Desmond looking as though we've spent half the day traveling. Of course, Lady Alicia. The private rooms reserved for high-ranking guests were modest compared with Silvercrest, but comfortable. 2 beds, a fireplace, a basin, a mirror. Rosanna dragged the trunk of daytime dresses inside. The green one, Alicia decided immediately. She studied herself in the mirror. It makes my eyes brighter. I want my hair down, but curl the ends. She glanced toward Rosanna. Can you manage that, or is it beyond you? Rosanna had been arranging Alicia's hair since she was 10. I can manage, Lady Alicia. Good. Hurry. I'm starving. The next half hour became chaos. Rosanna undressed both sisters, fastened new gowns, tightened corsets, styled hair, searched trunks for jewelry. Alicia wanted gold earrings. Celeste wanted silver. Then Alicia decided silver was actually better and demanded to know why Rosanna had not suggested that immediately. Celeste changed dresses because the first color made her look pale. By the time both sisters were satisfied, Rosanna's hands throbbed. Her patience had been stretched nearly transparent, but Alicia and Celeste looked beautiful, annoyingly beautiful, and Rosanna's opinion of them did not change the fact that her job was to make them shine. My darlings. Luna Patricia appeared in the doorway, wearing her own fresh gown. She examined Alicia and Celeste critically, then approval softened her expression. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The Alpha King will have difficulty resisting either of you. Celeste turned in front of the mirror. What about me, Mother? Do you think he'll notice me before Alicia? Patricia smiled carefully. I think Cameron Livingston will consider himself fortunate if either of my daughters becomes his Luna. Then Patricia noticed Rosanna. Her smile disappeared. Rosanna still wore her faded traveling clothes. Her dark hair had come loose during the carriage ride. You look dreadful. Rosanna lowered her eyes. Clean yourself before you embarrass us in front of Alpha Desmond. Yes, Luna. And find Celeste's blue shawl. She'll need it later. Yes, Luna. Patricia left with her daughters. Rosanna remained alone. For several seconds she stood perfectly still. Then she sat heavily on the bed and covered her face with both hands. She breathed. Nothing more. Just breathed. This was only the first day. 2 more days before they even reached the royal pack. Then 3 days of selection events. 3 days serving Alicia and Celeste while powerful, beautiful she-wolves competed for a future Rosanna could never touch. She did not belong in that world. Everyone knew it. Perhaps even the universe knew it. Why else would every other teenager possess a wolf while Rosanna remained trapped in a human body? Get up, she whispered to herself. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Do your job. She washed her face, used her fingers to tame her hair, then headed toward the common room. It was larger than she expected. Long tables could probably seat 50 wolves. At the moment, perhaps 20 people occupied the room, the Silvercrest party and several Ironwood members serving food and drinks. Rosanna remained near the walls. Servants ate last. Always. Alpha Douglas sat with Alpha Desmond, discussing territory and trade with the casual confidence of men accustomed to shaping other people's lives. Across the room, Luna Patricia sat with Alicia and Celeste. Here. Colleen appeared beside Rosanna holding a plate. Bread. Cheese. Slices of cold meat. Rosanna stared. Eat quickly before someone sees. Rosanna accepted it gratefully. Thank you. Don't thank me loudly. If Patricia realizes I fed you before she finished eating, we'll both regret it. Rosanna almost smiled. The food was simple, but it tasted better than most of the scraps she received at Silvercrest. She and Colleen ate quietly in the corner. Rosanna had spent years perfecting invisibility. She knew how to stand so people's eyes moved past her. How to walk quietly enough that even wolves with supernatural hearing sometimes forgot she was nearby. It was not a talent she had chosen. It was one survival had demanded. Do you ever wonder? Colleen asked. Rosanna looked at her. What? What being like them feels like? Colleen glanced toward the alphas. To have so much power that you simply assume the world will move out of your way. Sometimes. Rosanna took another bite. But wondering doesn't change anything. No. Colleen sighed. I suppose it doesn't. The meal continued. Eventually, Alpha Douglas and Desmond began discussing the selection. Its politics. Its importance. The honor of the Alpha King seeking a mate among Northern Territory packs instead of Southern or Eastern families. My daughters have as strong a chance as anyone, Douglas said proudly. Alicia has Patricia's intelligence and beauty. Celeste possesses determination and spirit. Cameron would be fortunate with either. Desmond leaned back. The Alpha King is difficult to impress. Douglas's smile tightened. I've heard that during the previous selection he rejected 12 potential matches because none possessed what he wanted. What exactly does he want? Something specific. Desmond counted on his fingers. Strength, intelligence, loyalty, fire. Beauty alone won't satisfy him. My daughters possess all of those. I'm sure they do. I'm only saying the competition will be brutal. Desmond lowered his voice slightly. Blackwater is sending their Alpha's niece. She killed a rogue Alpha by herself last winter. Storm Ridge is bringing the she-wolf who won the Northern Territory's combat championship 3 years in succession. Their conversation continued. Rosanna stopped listening. Her thoughts had caught on 4 words. Strength, intelligence, loyalty, fire, qualities Cameron Livingston supposedly wanted from his Luna. Qualities Rosanna had needed simply to survive Patricia's household. No one had ever called them strengths when Rosanna displayed them. But it didn't matter. Cameron wasn't searching for a wolfless orphan servant. He needed a Luna who could command packs. An equal. Someone capable of producing strong wolf-blooded heirs. Everything Rosanna could never become. Time to move, Colleen murmured. Rosanna looked up. Patricia's standing. They'll want the carriages ready in 10 minutes. The afternoon journey was worse. Road conditions deteriorated as they moved farther into neutral forest. The servant's carriage bucked over rocks and ruts until Rosanna's stomach turned. One younger Omega became sick. They stopped long enough for the girl to stumble into the bushes. Pathetic, one of Patricia's handmaids muttered. If you can't survive a carriage ride, how do you expect to survive selection week? The young Omega couldn't have been older than 14. Humiliation burned across her face. Without speaking, Rosanna offered her a water skin. The girl accepted it. Sometimes kindness didn't need an explanation. By sunset, the group entered Riverside Pack territory. They were halfway to Royal Pack land. The following day they would pass through 2 more territories, then camp in neutral ground near the royal border. On the 3rd day, they would finally enter Cameron Livingston's domain. Riverside's way station was larger. The pack controlled considerable travel through its land. Alpha Jules Lynch greeted Douglas personally. He was lean, sharp-eyed, and carried the practiced smile of a politician. He complimented Patricia, then Alicia, then Celeste. He assured both sisters they would surely catch the Alpha King's attention. Rosanna repeated the same routine. Help them change, arrange their hair, retrieve whatever object they suddenly required, disappear during meals. By the time she reached the shared servants' sleeping room, exhaustion had settled into her bones. Narrow beds lined the walls. Rosanna collapsed onto one of the thin mattresses. But sleep refused to come. Around her, servants snored. Someone coughed. Another person shifted restlessly under the blankets. Rosanna stared into the darkness. She tried not to think about tomorrow, or the next day, or what waited for her when the journey ended. Nothing waited. That was the truth. She would serve Alicia and Celeste. Watch beautiful she-wolves compete for Cameron Livingston. Pack everything once the selection ended. Return to Silvercrest. And perhaps spend another 60 years scrubbing floors until her body failed, or Patricia finally convinced Douglas to throw her away. Girls like you do not receive fairy tale endings. The words had become a cage. Rosanna finally slept sometime after midnight. Her dreams were dark and restless. Again, golden eyes watched her from shadows. She ran through unfamiliar forests that somehow felt like home. Somewhere behind her, a deep male voice spoke. Rosanna couldn't understand the words, but she felt them inside her chest like distant thunder. At dawn, she woke with a strange sensation. Something had changed. The air felt charged, like the moment before lightning. Rosanna blamed exhaustion, nerves, the journey. She had no way to know how close everything was to breaking apart. How quickly the careful walls around her expectations would begin to fall. For 17 years, destiny had seemed perfectly content to ignore Rosanna Friedman. But destiny was finally looking in her direction. And once it did, there would be no returning to invisibility. Chapter 3. The Royal Territory. The third day began beneath a blood-red sunrise. Crimson and gold spread across the horizon. Rosanna had spent years watching weather from her tiny Silvercrest window, and she knew the old warning. Red sky in the morning meant storms. Yet as she stepped outside the neutral zone camp where they had slept, the air was completely still, almost expectant, as though the world itself waited. "Stop staring and help us load." One of Patricia's handmaids pushed past carrying folded blankets. "We need to reach Royal Pack territory by midday. The Luna wants everything perfect." Perfect. Patricia always wanted perfect. Rosanna helped load the carriages. Every muscle hurt. 3 days of work and poor sleep had left fresh blisters on her hands. Her back ached from the narrow carriage. Her head throbbed from hunger. Servants ate after everyone else, which usually meant Rosanna received whatever remained. She still didn't complain. Complaints belonged to people who expected someone to care. Rosanna. Alicia stood beside the main carriage in a dark emerald traveling dress that probably cost more than Rosanna would earn in years. "My hair needs to be braided again." Rosanna looked at it. It already appeared flawless. "The wind ruined it overnight. I refuse to enter Royal Pack territory looking like a common Omega." "Yes, Lady Alicia." Rosanna collected the pins and brush. Celeste appeared moments later, nearly vibrating with excitement. "Do you think he'll greet us himself?" Alicia tilted her head while Rosanna worked. "Who?" "The Alpha King, when we reach the palace. Mother says he traditionally greets every visiting Alpha himself." Alicia sounded knowledgeable. "He'll probably be on the front steps with his beta and senior wolves. Every delegation will be presented formally. I heard he's even more handsome than the stories say," Celeste said. "Sarah from Blackwater said her cousin saw him at the last selection. She said looking at him hurt, like staring directly into the sun." "Beauty is irrelevant if he's cruel," Alicia replied. But Rosanna knew Alicia cared very much about beauty. "Power matters. He's the strongest Alpha in 6 generations. Whoever he chooses becomes the most important she-wolf in the Northern Territories." Rosanna continued braiding. The sisters had spoken about Cameron Livingston for 3 straight days. His looks, his power, his personality, his standards. Everything eventually returned to the same question. How could they make him notice them? There. Rosanna secured the final pin. "You look beautiful, Lady Alicia." Alicia inspected herself with a hand mirror. For one hopeful moment, Rosanna thought she might actually be satisfied. Then Alicia frowned. "The left side is uneven." It wasn't. Both women knew it wasn't. Rosanna removed the braid anyway. "Of course, Lady Alicia." By the time everyone was ready, sunlight had replaced the red dawn. 5 Silvercrest carriages began moving toward Royal Pack territory. The difference became obvious almost immediately after they crossed the border. The forest changed first. Trees grew taller, older. Their trunks were wider than anything Rosanna had ever seen. The roads were smooth and carefully maintained. Royal patrols moved in pairs along the route. Sharp eyes, coordinated steps, military discipline. "These wolves are enormous," an Omega whispered. "That one must be over 7 feet in human form. How large would his wolf be?" "Large enough to tear apart a raiding party." Another servant leaned closer to the window. They say royal warriors are the best in every territory, trained from childhood, completely loyal to Cameron. Rosanna watched in silence. Even the air seemed different, cleaner, charged with something she couldn't identify. Power, perhaps, or the pressure of centuries of history. Royal Pack was the oldest recognized pack in the territories. Its bloodlines reached back toward the first organized werewolf clans. Its alphas had always been leaders. Dominant wolves, other alphas naturally followed, and Cameron Livingston was said to be stronger than every predecessor in generations. Then the trees abruptly opened. Rosanna stopped breathing. The royal residence was not a mansion. It was a palace. 3 stories of timber and stone rose against the mountains. 4 towers extended higher at the corners. Massive symmetrical wings stretched from the central building. Hundreds of wolves could live inside. Windows reflected sunlight like diamonds. Gardens spread in every direction. Beyond the main palace stood barracks, training grounds, smaller residences, and farther away, what appeared to be an entire town. "This isn't a pack," Rosanna whispered. "It's a kingdom." "Moon goddess." Colleen breathed beside her. "I heard the stories. They don't even come close." The carriages followed a wide road toward the entrance. Wolves had gathered everywhere. Dozens. Then hundreds. The royal pack had apparently turned out to greet the arriving delegations. At the center of the palace steps stood one man. Rosanna knew immediately who he was. Cameron Livingston required no introduction. Even at a distance, he commanded attention. He was tall, perhaps 6.5 feet, built with the balanced strength of someone who could move with both speed and violence. Dark hair caught the afternoon sun. His features were still difficult to see, but the way he stood told Rosanna enough. Absolute confidence. Absolute control. He wore black. On another man it might have looked somber. On Cameron, it made him appear dangerous. Like a predator from one of the old stories used to frighten children into obedience. The carriages stopped. Alpha Douglas stepped out first. Patricia followed. Then, Alicia and Celeste. Both sisters had gone visibly pale beneath their carefully applied cosmetics. Their excitement had become nerves. Cameron descended the palace steps. Every movement was deliberate, controlled. He greeted Douglas. Patricia offered a flawless curtsy. Alicia and Celeste followed with the graceful movements they had practiced for months. Then Cameron's gaze swept across them. Rosanna felt it from inside the servant's carriage. And when she finally saw his eyes clearly, her body went still. Gold. Not brown. Not amber. Pure molten gold. Exactly like the eyes from her dreams. Rosanna's heart stumbled. Impossible. She was exhausted. Overwhelmed. Her mind was finding patterns that didn't exist. "Servants remain inside until formal greetings are complete," one of the handmaids announced. "Afterward, royal staff will show us to our quarters." Rosanna sat back. She tried not to stare, tried not to imagine what living inside such a place might feel like. Power seemed built into the stone itself. Every wolf here appeared to understand where they belonged. Rosanna belonged in its servant's wing, if she belonged anywhere at all. Greetings lasted nearly an hour. Delegations continued arriving. Blackwater came with a battle-scarred alpha and his formidable niece. Storm Ridge arrived with its champion. Moonwater brought twin sisters who moved with such perfect coordination they seemed connected by invisible strings. Dozens of packs. Every alpha offering his finest unmarried she-wolves. Every family hoping marriage to Cameron Livingston might alter its future. Politics, tradition, spectacle. Finally, a young Royal Omega approached the servant's carriage. She looked around 20, with intelligent eyes and an efficient but kind expression. "Visiting servants, please follow me. I'll take you to your quarters and explain selection protocol." Rosanna collected her cloth bag. The servants entered through a side entrance. Naturally, the great front doors belonged to alphas and their families. The Omega introduced herself as Nidita. She guided them through wide service corridors that were cleaner and brighter than some of Silvercrest's main halls. Eventually, they reached a dormitory. Actual beds lined the walls. Simple, but comfortable. Far better than the thin mattresses Rosanna usually received. Visiting attendants sleep here, Nidita explained. Meals are served in the servants' dining hall at dawn, midday, and dusk. You're expected to remain available to whichever pack members you serve. She glanced around. Selection events begin tomorrow evening. Today is for settling in and preparing your ladies for tonight's welcoming feast. Assignments were distributed. Predictably, Rosanna was assigned to both Alicia and Celeste. Patricia had clearly demanded familiar service instead of relying on royal attendance. The feast begins at sunset, Nidita continued. It's formal. All visiting alphas and their daughters will attend. Your ladies will need their finest gowns, jewelry, and whatever else they require. The Alpha King will address everyone and explain the trials. No one asked questions. Rosanna soon found Alicia and Celeste's chambers on the second floor. Each sister had a separate room, canopy beds, ornate furniture, large windows overlooking the gardens. Their trunks had already arrived. Finally, Celeste dropped dramatically onto her bed. I thought that journey would never end. 3 days of terrible roads and even worse company. We're here now, Alicia said. She began examining the room immediately. Tonight matters. This is our first real impression. Cameron will be watching all of us. I'm wearing silver, Celeste announced. The low-backed gown. Mother says it makes me look sophisticated. You'll look desperate, Alicia replied. I'm wearing blue. Classic, elegant, like a Luna. Their argument gained momentum. Rosanna ignored it and unpacked. Gowns had to be hung, jewelry arranged, cosmetics placed on the vanity. Shoes lined up and inspected. Hours disappeared. Warm afternoon light filled the rooms. Somewhere elsewhere in the palace, Cameron was probably coordinating the arrival of dozens of alphas and perhaps 100 potential mates. Rosanna wondered if even an alpha king could find something like that exhausting. Then she corrected herself. It didn't matter. She would never speak to him. She would never truly meet him. In Cameron Livingston's story, Rosanna was scenery, if she existed at all. Rosanna, Alicia's voice snapped her back. Stop dreaming and tighten this corset. Yes, Lady Alicia. The feast starts in 2 hours. I have to look perfect. Perfect. Always perfect. Rosanna laced Alicia's corset, settled the blue gown over her, then spent 45 minutes creating an elaborate golden updo. Afterward, she prepared Celeste. Silver gown, different hairstyle, necklaces, earrings, cosmetics. When the sisters were finally satisfied, sunset had almost arrived. They studied their reflections like soldiers checking armor. In a strange way, that was exactly what they were. Their weapons simply happened to be beauty and charm instead of claws. Acceptable, Alicia said. It was probably the closest Rosanna would ever receive to praise. Wait here. We'll send someone if we need you. She narrowed her eyes. And don't wander. You aren't a guest. I won't have you embarrassing us by appearing somewhere you don't belong. Yes, Lady Alicia. The sisters swept from the room. Perfume and silk followed them. Rosanna sat on the edge of Celeste's bed. She would never have risked sitting on Alicia's. For the first time in hours, she breathed without someone demanding something. Music began somewhere below. Voices filled the palace. Hundreds of wolves gathering. Laughter. Crystal glasses. Formal shoes against polished floors. A world separated from Rosanna by invisible boundaries formed by birth, rank, and circumstance. Her stomach growled. She had eaten almost nothing since breakfast. Servants would receive dinner only after the feast, probably hours away. Rosanna crossed to the window. Gardens spread beneath her. Beyond them stood forests and distant mountains beneath a sky painted amber and rose by the setting sun. It was painfully beautiful. Rosanna rested her forehead against the cool glass. This is not your world. She reminded herself silently. This is not your story. You are only passing through. The thought should have comforted her. Instead, for reasons she didn't understand, it felt almost like grief. Chapter 4. The Welcoming Feast. The palace became louder as night deepened. Music drifted upward from the ballroom. Rosanna heard hundreds of voices, glass touching glass, fabric moving across marble. Every eligible she-wolf below was likely searching for the perfect place to stand, where Cameron Livingston might notice her. Rosanna had been told to remain in Celeste's room. She was supposed to wait quietly, in case either sister needed something. But after almost an hour alone with an empty stomach, curiosity won. She wanted to see. Only for a moment. The second floor held a balcony overlooking the ballroom, intended partly for servants whose masters might need them during formal events. Rosanna quietly made her way there. Several servants already stood along the railing. The sight below was breathtaking. The ballroom seemed impossibly large. Crystal chandeliers reflected hundreds of candles. Tables along the walls carried roasted meats, fresh bread, fruit, cheese, and desserts so intricate they hardly looked edible. At the far end stood a raised dais reserved for Cameron and his senior wolves, but Rosanna's attention went to the gathering itself. She had never seen so many powerful wolves together, alphas from across the territories, their daughters in gowns of every imaginable color: silver, blue, red, gold, green, purple. Each dress had clearly been chosen for one purpose: to be remembered. Alicia stood near the center in blue, already surrounded by several visiting alpha sons who had noticed her. Celeste laughed with a group of younger she-wolves. Their smiles looked slightly too bright. Everyone was trying to appear more confident than they felt. Quite a sight, isn't it? Rosanna jumped. Nidita stood beside her, smiling. I've watched 3 selections. The opening feast still impresses me. It's... Rosanna searched for the right word. Overwhelming. That's deliberate. Nidita leaned against the railing. Cameron wants everyone to understand what this decision means. The selection isn't simply about mating. Whoever becomes Luna influences political alliances for generations. Her expression grew thoughtful. Sometimes I wonder whether all this ceremony makes real connection harder. Before Rosanna could answer, something shifted inside the ballroom. Conversation faded. Heads turned. A ripple of awareness moved through hundreds of wolves at once. The Alpha King had arrived. Cameron entered with his beta and 2 high-ranking males. Rosanna barely noticed anyone else. The rumors had not exaggerated him. His face was beautiful in the dangerous way a drawn blade could be beautiful. Sharp features. Controlled strength. Molten gold eyes that seemed capable of noticing everything. He moved with quiet predatory confidence. No alpha bowed. Alphas did not bow easily. But every one of them acknowledged Cameron with subtle changes in posture. Small nods. Moments of stillness. Respect. Rosanna had spent her life seeing Patricia use cruelty to remind people she possessed power. Cameron seemed different. His authority required no reminder. He sat. Only then did the room truly settle. A moment later, Cameron stood again. Silence came instantly. Welcome. His voice carried through the enormous room without effort. To every alpha who traveled here with his family, and every she-wolf who has come seeking the honor of becoming Luna of the royal pack, I offer my gratitude and respect. Rosanna listened from above. The selection is among our oldest traditions. Its purpose has always been to ensure that strong packs are guided by strong partnerships. He swept his gaze over the gathered competitors. During the next 3 days, you will be tested. Several she-wolves straightened. Not simply for beauty, not simply for bloodline. Alicia's expression changed slightly. Those things are only beginnings. I will test intelligence, courage, leadership, compassion. Cameron paused. The Luna I choose must stand beside me as an equal, not behind me as decoration. A murmur moved across the room. Some competitors looked thrilled, some nervous. Several appeared almost offended. Alicia was among them. The first event begins tomorrow evening, Cameron continued. The trial of wit. You will face challenges designed to test creativity and problem solving. Those with the lowest scores will leave the selection. Those who advance will face the trial of courage. His golden eyes moved across the ballroom, then lifted. For one brief instant, Rosanna thought he looked toward the servants' balcony, not directly at her. Perhaps not at anyone. But there was something strange in the gesture, an acknowledgement, as though the servants existed too. Then his gaze returned to the gathering. Enjoy the feast. Tomorrow, the selection truly begins. He sat. Noise returned all at once. Conversation. Music. Laughter edged with nerves. Royal servants moved through the room with platters and wine. The trial of wit, Nidita murmured. That's new. Rosanna looked at her. What did they do last time? Opening ball. Cameron watched the candidates and spoke with them individually. Nidita smiled faintly. He must be serious about intelligence this time. Will many be eliminated? Probably. Nidita watched the crowd. Some of these women have spent their entire lives learning how to be beautiful and agreeable. They haven't necessarily been taught how to think independently. She shrugged. Cameron doesn't want a Luna who smiles and agrees with everything. He wants someone willing to challenge him. The idea felt almost foreign to Rosanna. Patricia had taught Alicia and Celeste almost the opposite. Beauty first. Charm second. Make powerful men feel powerful. Never threaten their pride. I should return, Rosanna said. Lady Alicia might. Raised voices interrupted her. A disturbance had started near the ballroom doors. Then came Patricia's unmistakable voice. How dare you? Do you have any idea who I am? Rosanna's stomach dropped. Something had happened. She hurried down the corridor and stairs until she reached a side entrance. Servants and lower-ranking wolves had gathered at a careful distance. Rosanna slipped through them. Then she saw the center of the confrontation. Luna Patricia stood flushed with anger before a royal guard. Alicia and Celeste stood behind her, and between them was a crying girl, perhaps 14 years old. Celeste gripped the girl's arm hard enough to leave marks. The girl wore a simple servant's dress stained with wine. A tray lay overturned nearby. Broken crystal glittered across the floor. She spilled wine on me, Celeste shouted. She pointed toward a small stain on the hem of her silver gown. She ruined it. This dress costs more than her pathetic life. I'm sorry, the servant sobbed. It was an accident. Someone bumped into me, I swear. I don't care about your excuses. Celeste lifted her hand. She was going to strike the girl. Enough. One word. Quiet. Controlled. But it stopped everything. Cameron Livingston stood beside them. Rosanna had not even seen him approach. Every nearby wolf instinctively moved backward. Even Patricia seemed smaller. Release her, Cameron ordered. Celeste immediately let go. The servant stumbled away and was caught by an older Royal Omega. Alpha King, Patricia said. Her voice became suddenly sweet. I apologize for this unfortunate disturbance. My daughter's gown was damaged by this careless servant, and naturally we were simply expressing our... Your daughter was preparing to strike one of my pack members. Cameron's tone remained calm. That happened inside my home, during a feast organized to honor my guests and demonstrate mutual respect. The ballroom had fallen nearly silent. Alicia's face went pale. The girl spilled wine, Patricia insisted. Surely such negligence deserves. Accidents happen. Cameron looked directly at Celeste. Using power to hurt someone for an accident demonstrates cruelty, not leadership. Celeste swallowed. Is that the kind of Luna you intend to become? Someone who harms those beneath her because they cannot defend themselves. Celeste tried to speak. Nothing came. Finally, she whispered, "No, Alpha King." "Then apologize to my pack member." Celeste's eyes filled. Humiliation, anger, fear. She forced out an apology. Cameron's expression did not soften. "Consider this your first test." The entire ballroom waited. "And understand that you failed it." Celeste looked as though she had been struck. She fled deeper into the ballroom. Patricia followed, barely concealing fury. Alicia hesitated. For a moment she seemed torn between her sister and her own future. Then self-preservation won. She curtsied before Cameron, murmured something about Celeste being overwhelmed by the pressure, and followed them. The crowd slowly dispersed. Rosanna remained where she was. The most powerful alpha in the territories had publicly protected a servant. He had placed the powerless above the pride of an alpha's daughter. Everything Rosanna understood about power suddenly felt uncertain. "You." Rosanna froze. Cameron was looking directly at her. Her first instinct was to disappear. Her feet refused. "You're with Silvercrest?" "Yes, Alpha King." Her voice barely carried. "I serve the Alpha's daughters." Something moved across Cameron's expression, too quickly for Rosanna to understand. "You cared for them during the journey?" "Yes, Alpha King." "And you prepared them tonight?" Rosanna nodded. Why was he asking her? Why did it matter? Cameron studied her. Rosanna felt strangely exposed beneath those golden eyes. Not physically. Something deeper, as if her careful walls had become transparent. "What is your name?" Rosanna's heart beat harder. "Rosanna, Alpha King. Rosanna Friedman." He repeated it slowly. "Rosanna Friedman." The way he spoke her name made something inside her tighten. "Thank you for your service to your pack." Then Cameron walked away. He returned toward the dais, toward the feast, toward the 100 she-wolves competing for him. Rosanna remained frozen. He had asked her name. The Alpha King had asked a servant her name. It meant nothing. It couldn't. By morning he would probably forget her. Rosanna returned toward the servants' quarters. A plate had been saved for her. She sat and ate slowly. Everything from the evening replayed in her mind. Cameron defended servants. He valued intelligence. He wanted a woman capable of challenging him. None of that fit the world Rosanna knew, where power meant being allowed to hurt people who could not answer back. She thought of Celeste, of Patricia's fury. When they returned to Silvercrest, Patricia would find some way to blame Rosanna. She always did. But that was a problem for later. For now, Rosanna still had 3 days in this palace. 3 days in a place where the rules seemed different, where servants could matter enough to defend, where the most powerful alpha alive possessed golden eyes that somehow made Rosanna feel seen. She lay on her narrow bed. Around her, servants whispered about the confrontation, about Celeste, about Cameron. Rosanna closed her eyes. She tried not to remember the sound of her name in his voice, tried not to wonder why her heart still raced, and most of all, tried not to hope. But hope, Rosanna was beginning to discover, did not always wait for permission. Sometimes it entered through the smallest cracks. Dangerous, impossible, and once inside, very difficult to remove. Chapter 5. The Trial of Wit. Rain struck the palace windows when morning came. Rosanna woke before dawn. Years of early chores had trained her body too well to sleep late. The dormitory remained mostly dark. She dressed quietly and went to the servants' dining hall before the morning rush. Only a few tables were occupied. Rosanna collected porridge and sat in one corner. Her mind kept returning to the previous night. The servant girl. Celeste. Cameron. "What is your name?" She told herself again that it meant nothing. Nidita dropped into the chair across from her. "You're awake early." Rosanna looked up. "Couldn't sleep?" "Partly. I'm also used to waking early." Nidita nodded. I heard everything about last night. The entire pack is talking about the Silvercrest daughter and our serving girl. Rosanna's spoon stopped. Is the girl all right? Helen? She's fine. Shaken, obviously. Nidita leaned forward. Cameron sent his personal healer to examine her. He also reassigned her to kitchen work for the rest of the selection, so she won't have to deal directly with visiting wolves. Rosanna absorbed that. He protects his pack, Nidita said. He always has. Some alphas treat servants as if they can be replaced. Cameron treats every member here with respect. She smiled faintly. That's why people would follow him into a fire if he asked. Rosanna was struck by the casual way Nidita used his first name. At Silvercrest, calling the alpha by his first name without permission would have been considered an insult. What are people saying? Rosanna asked. About Celeste. Nidita grimaced. That she showed exactly who she is. That she's the opposite of what Cameron wants. She lowered her voice. Some think Alicia might suffer because of association. Then Nidita studied Rosanna. They're also talking about you. Rosanna almost dropped her spoon. Me? You were there. Cameron spoke to you. He only asked my name. That isn't nothing. It was. Cameron doesn't usually do things without a reason. Heat rose into Rosanna's face. Nidita tilted her head. What pack were you born into? I don't really know. Rosanna looked down. My parents died when I was 5. Alpha Douglas took me in after the rogue attack. I don't remember much from before Silvercrest. Nidita's eyes moved over her. You don't have a wolf. It wasn't really a question. Rosanna shook her head. No, I should have shifted years ago. Nothing happened. That must be difficult. The sympathy sounded real. Rosanna wasn't accustomed to sympathy without mockery attached. The pack bond is such an important part of life, Nidita continued. Not being able to access it. She paused. Maybe your wolf is simply late. Rosanna almost smiled. It was a kind thing to say. But almost no wolf shifted after 18. Rosanna had only 3 months until her birthday. She had stopped expecting miracles. The trial of wit begins tonight, Nidita said, changing the subject. I imagine the competitors are terrified. What kind of challenges are there? Riddles, strategy, logic, mental flexibility. Cameron eliminated half the participants through intellectual testing during a previous event. Nidita grinned. It's interesting. You can tell very quickly which women learned to think, and which were trained only to look pretty. Rosanna thought of Alicia and Celeste. Both had received tutors. History, literature, basic mathematics. But Patricia had always made her priorities clear. Men do not want wives who make them feel stupid. A woman should make a man feel intelligent. Apparently Cameron Livingston had different preferences. The day passed quickly. Rosanna helped both sisters prepare. Celeste was quieter than usual. Her eyes remained red. Every knock on the door made her flinch. Alicia controlled herself better, but tension showed in the set of her jaw and the slight trembling in her hands. As Rosanna styled Celeste's hair, Celeste suddenly asked, Do you think I'm already eliminated? Rosanna looked at her reflection. The Alpha King. Do you think last night means I have no chance? Rosanna chose her response carefully. I think tonight gives you an opportunity to show him who you are. Celeste laughed bitterly. But who I am is someone who almost hit a servant because she spilled wine. Her voice became smaller. That's what he saw. Everyone saw. It was perhaps the most honest Rosanna had ever heard Celeste speak. For one brief moment, Rosanna saw someone beneath the spoiled alpha daughter, a 16-year-old who had been taught from childhood that power meant dominance, that servants existed to absorb anger, that mistakes deserved punishment. Then show him something different, Rosanna said. Celeste looked up. Show him you can learn after making a mistake. Their eyes met through the mirror. Something changed between them. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Perhaps only the first hint that change might be possible. Then Luna Patricia entered. Are you both ready? Her anger filled the room before she did. The trial starts in 2 hours. I will not tolerate another humiliation. We're ready, Mother, Alicia answered. Patricia looked at Rosanna. You, come. Rosanna's blood went cold. She followed Patricia into the hallway. The moment they were alone, Patricia rounded on her. This is your fault. Rosanna stared. If you had been watching properly last night, if you had controlled the serving situation instead of skulking around the palace, you could have prevented what happened. The accusation was so irrational, Rosanna almost laughed. Almost. Luna, I wasn't even inside the ballroom when… Do not argue with me. Patricia grabbed Rosanna's chin. Her fingers pressed hard enough to bruise. You have been a curse on this family since the day Douglas brought you here. Rosanna forced herself not to pull away. Every humiliation, every failure, somehow you are there. Patricia's eyes were cold. When we return to Silvercrest, we are going to have a very serious discussion about whether you have any future in my home. Something about the threat felt different, more immediate. Do you understand? Yes, Luna. Good. Patricia released her. Disappear. I don't want to see your face until my daughters return from the trial. She walked away. Rosanna remained against the wall. Her chin throbbed. 3 days. That was all she had before they returned home. 3 days before Patricia decided what to do with her. For a few foolish hours, Rosanna had imagined a different kind of world. One where servants mattered. Where intelligence mattered. Where someone like her might possess value. But that world did not belong to her. Rosanna pushed herself away from the wall. She needed somewhere quiet. Somewhere Patricia would not find her. Somewhere she could breathe. The library. Rosanna had glimpsed it the previous day. A vast room of books and windows overlooking the gardens. Almost every important wolf would be attending the trial. It should be empty. Rosanna found the door open. Late afternoon sunlight streamed across shelves. The smell of leather and old paper surrounded her. She loved books, always had, but opportunities to read at Silvercrest were rare. Patricia believed books were wasted on servants. Rosanna slowly walked between the shelves. History, philosophy, poetry, pack politics, werewolf biology, accounts of the early centuries before humans and wolves signed integration treaties. She brushed her fingers lightly over the spines. Most wolves avoid the library before a trial. Rosanna spun. Her heart leaped. Cameron stood in the doorway. Alpha King. She immediately curtsied. I apologize. I didn't realize. I'll leave. You're not intruding. Cameron entered. The library is open to anyone staying in the palace. Rosanna's instincts told her to run, not because he frightened her, because being noticed frightened her. Shouldn't you be at the trial? The question escaped before she could stop herself. Rosanna nearly closed her eyes in horror. She had just questioned the Alpha King. Cameron merely glanced toward one shelf. It doesn't begin for another hour. I prefer time alone before important events. It helps me think. He removed a leather-bound book, then looked at her. Do you read, Rosanna Friedman? He remembered her name. Rosanna's pulse jumped. When I have the opportunity, Alpha King. Which isn't often. No. Why? The question sounded genuinely curious. Rosanna searched for a safe answer. Servants are busy. There isn't much leisure. And yet you came here. Rosanna hesitated. She couldn't explain that she was hiding from Patricia. I like books. She looked around. They let me see worlds I'll probably never visit. Cameron watched her. Probably never? Girls like me don't travel much beyond the territory where they're born. Girls like you. He repeated the phrase. What exactly does that mean? Rosanna felt danger. Not physical danger. The danger of revealing too much. I should go. Lady Alicia may need me before. You're Wolfless. Rosanna stopped. It wasn't a question. She nodded. Yes. That must be difficult. Cameron's tone carried no pity. Especially inside a pack like Silvercrest, where rank determines nearly everything. It's fine. Rosanna forced a small shrug. I manage. Do you? 2 quiet words. They struck harder than they should have. No, that was the true answer. She didn't manage. She survived. She endured. Every morning she woke and convinced herself that enduring one more day was enough. But Rosanna said none of that. Cameron set the book back. Last night, when Celeste confronted my servant, you were watching. Yes, Alpha King. You didn't appear surprised. Rosanna's fingers curled. What do you mean? You looked as if you had witnessed similar behavior before. Rosanna immediately became careful. Lady Celeste was under pressure. The selection matters to her family. Stress sometimes causes people to react badly. Cameron's mouth almost moved. That is a very diplomatic way to say she has been taught that servants are acceptable targets for frustration. Rosanna stayed silent. I know Alpha Douglas, Cameron continued. He's a strong wolf. Fair in his own way, but his mate. He left the sentence unfinished. Rosanna refused to complete it. Criticizing Patricia to another alpha could follow her home. You are loyal, Cameron observed, even when loyalty costs you. I have nowhere else to go, Alpha King. The words came more honestly than Rosanna intended. Loyalty is survival. Something in Cameron's expression changed. Everyone deserves somewhere they belong. Rosanna's throat tightened. Somewhere they are valued. His gaze stayed on hers. Not merely tolerated. Rosanna blinked quickly against sudden tears. She would not cry in front of him. The trial, she said. They'll be waiting. For several seconds Cameron did not move. Then he smiled. Barely. But even that small smile transformed his face. You're right. He started toward the door, then stopped. Rosanna Friedman. Yes, Alpha King? You may use this library whenever you wish. Rosanna stared. That's not a courtesy. His voice became firmer. It's an order. If anyone questions your presence, tell them the Alpha King granted permission. Then he left. Rosanna remained among the books, heart racing. An order. He had turned permission into an order, ensuring no one could take it away from her. Why? Why had Cameron noticed her? Why did he care whether she read? Why did he look at her like a question instead of a servant? Outside, wolves began crossing the gardens toward the great hall. Rosanna should join the servants' gallery and watch Alicia and Celeste compete. But for several more minutes she sat in one of the soft library chairs. For several minutes, she allowed herself to exist somewhere between invisible and seen, between hopelessness and possibility. Then she stood, smoothed her old dress, and went toward the trial. Whatever came next, she would face it as she had faced everything else. One breath, one step, until either the world finally broke her, or she learned how to break free. Chapter 6. Torn Silk and Golden Eyes. The great hall looked completely different. The feast tables were gone. 10 challenge stations had been arranged throughout the enormous room. Rosanna saw puzzle boxes, strategy boards, scrolls covered in ancient writing, mechanical devices, and other tests she couldn't identify from above. Nearly 100 competing she-wolves gathered in the center. Their evening gowns ranged from elegant simplicity to breathtaking extravagance. Alicia wore deep purple. Celeste had chosen pale pink, perhaps hoping to appear gentler after the previous evening. Rosanna found a position inside the servants' gallery. From there she could see the competitors, every station, and the raised platform where Cameron sat with his beta and senior royal wolves. The Alpha King looked calm. His golden eyes moved over the room. Welcome to the trial of wit. His voice carried easily. 10 challenges stand before you. Each measures a different form of intelligence. Logic, pattern recognition, creativity, strategic thinking, language, spatial reasoning, and more. The candidates listened intently. You have until midnight. Complete as many challenges as possible. Scores depend upon accuracy and difficulty. Cameron paused. The 30 lowest scoring she-wolves will be eliminated. Anxious murmurs spread. 70 would survive the evening. Not terrible odds. Not comfortable ones either. You may work independently or cooperate, Cameron continued, but remember, Aluna must know how to stand alone when circumstances require it. He looked over them. Choose wisely. Begin. The room exploded into movement. Alicia immediately chose a logic station. Celeste hesitated, then followed her sister. Rosanna became fascinated despite herself. One station required decoding an encrypted message with only a simple key. Another involved a complicated mechanical puzzle. At another, competitors played strategy against a royal wolf who clearly had years of experience. Rosanna leaned forward. She had always loved puzzles. During lonely nights at Silvercrest, she sometimes created logic problems in her journal, because there was little else she could do for herself. An hour passed. Several she-wolves moved confidently. Others became frustrated. One alpha daughter actually screamed when she failed to solve a riddle. She declared intelligence tests beneath someone of her breeding. 2 guards escorted her out, eliminated immediately. Alicia performed reasonably well. She wasn't the fastest, but she remained methodical. Celeste struggled. Each failed challenge increased her panic. Your pack sisters aren't doing particularly well. Rosanna turned. Nidita sat beside her carrying 2 cups of tea. She offered one. Alicia is managing, Rosanna said. Celeste is drowning, Nidita finished. She took a sip. I'd probably feel sorry for her if she hadn't nearly struck Helen. Rosanna said nothing. Pack loyalty suggested she should defend Celeste. But there was nothing false about Nidita's statement. The Alpha King is looking at you. Rosanna's head snapped toward the dais. Cameron's golden gaze was indeed lifted toward the servants' gallery. For one breath, their eyes met. Then he looked away. I imagined it. You absolutely did not. Nidita looked amused. He asked about you earlier. Rosanna stared at her. What? My sister works as one of his assistants. Cameron asked whether you were being treated properly during your stay. Why would he care? That's the question. Nidita studied Rosanna with open curiosity. Cameron does nothing randomly. So? So either you did something that interested him. Nidita hesitated. Or you're his mate and the bond is beginning to recognize itself. Rosanna laughed. An actual laugh. Several servants glanced toward them. That's impossible. Why? I don't have a wolf. There's no bond. Mate bonds don't always require both people to have shifted. Nidita lowered her voice. It's rare, but there are records. The connection exists deeper than the physical wolf. Rosanna shook her head. Cameron has remained unmated for 28 years, Nidita continued, despite dozens of opportunities. Perhaps he was waiting for someone specific. Yes. Rosanna tried to sound dry. A wolfless servant from the pack that publicly humiliated itself on the first night. She looked back toward the trial. You're seeing a pattern that isn't there. But her mind betrayed her. The library. Cameron remembering her name. His questions. Everyone deserves somewhere they belong. No. Rosanna couldn't allow herself to build fantasies from kindness. Hope created expectations. Expectations created pain. Movement below drew her attention. A Blackwater competitor solved a difficult challenge that had defeated everyone before her. Cameron stood to acknowledge the success. The she-wolf practically glowed. The competition continued. Some candidates were truly brilliant. Others had clearly never faced intellectual pressure. Alicia completed another station and approached the ancient language challenge. Celeste had stopped moving. She stood near one wall with tears running down her face. She had attempted perhaps 3 challenges. Failed all of them. At this rate, she would certainly be eliminated. Rosanna felt an unwanted flicker of sympathy. Celeste was cruel, spoiled, thoughtless. But she was also 16, and her life's greatest ambition was collapsing before hundreds of witnesses. 10 o'clock arrived. 2 hours remained. Some stronger competitors began helping others. It was strategic. Cooperation demonstrated leadership. No one approached Celeste. Her behavior toward Helen had isolated her. Alicia looked toward her sister. Rosanna could almost see the calculation. Help Celeste and lose valuable time, or protect her own score. Alicia turned away. Self-preservation won. That's brutal, Nidita whispered. Rosanna knew exactly where Alicia had learned it. Win first, sentiment later, perhaps never. 11 o'clock, then later. The pace slowed. Royal officials counted completed challenges. The tension became almost physical. Everyone knew 30 women would leave tonight. At midnight, Cameron stood. Time. All competitors returned to the center. Some were confident. Others looked ill. Celeste no longer cried, but her red eyes and bowed head made it clear she already knew. The scores are complete, Cameron said. Before I announce the results, I want every she-wolf here to understand something. The hall quieted. Intellectual testing exposes vulnerabilities differently from physical combat. Every one of you stepped forward despite that. His gaze moved over them. You tried. That matters. Rosanna watched shoulders straighten. That was leadership, she realized, not fear. Making people feel seen even while denying them what they wanted. Cameron began announcing names. Alicia advanced. She ranked within the top 20. Rosanna felt an unexpected spark of pride. More names followed. Celeste's did not. When 70 names had been read, 30 women remained outside the chosen group. Celeste stood among them. For those leaving tonight, Cameron said more gently, this is not a judgment of your value. Different wolves possess different strengths. I require particular qualities from my Luna, and not every worthy she-wolf will match them. His gaze moved across the eliminated competitors. You competed. You represented your packs. You leave with honor. The kindness could not remove rejection. The eliminated women filed out. Some with dignity, some crying, some numb. Celeste walked away without looking at anyone. Rosanna felt something complicated inside her. Not satisfaction. Not exactly pity. Understanding, perhaps. The hall emptied. Royal workers began dismantling the stations. Rosanna left the gallery. She intended to check whether Alicia needed anything, then sleep. Instead, she found Celeste collapsed against the corridor wall outside. Her face was buried in her hands. Patricia stood over her. You are an embarrassment. Rosanna froze in the shadows. A disgrace to this family. Celeste flinched. When we return home, you will pay for what you did to us tonight. Rosanna should have left. This was not her family, not her fight. Then Patricia continued. Each sentence seemed crafted not to correct Celeste, but destroy her. Rosanna had heard that tone too many times. Cruelty had not appeared inside Celeste from nowhere. She had learned it. Luna Patricia. The words escaped Rosanna before she could reconsider. Both women turned. Rosanna's heart hammered. Lady Alicia is looking for you. She wants to discuss her performance. It was a terrible lie, obviously invented. Patricia's eyes narrowed, but it offered her an exit. We will finish this later, Patricia told Celeste. Do not imagine your failure will go unpunished. Then she walked away. Rosanna remained with Celeste. Neither spoke for several seconds. Why? Celeste finally looked up. Her face was swollen from crying. Why did you do that after everything I've done to you? I don't know. Rosanna meant it. I failed. Celeste's voice broke. I failed, and Mother is going to make my life unbearable. She gave a hollow laugh. I deserve it. I'm stupid. Useless. You're not stupid. Rosanna's answer came more firmly than intended. Celeste stared. You were overwhelmed. That isn't the same thing. You think I could have done better? I think you were raised to believe intelligence mattered less than beauty. Rosanna met her eyes. Then you were placed inside a competition testing the exact qualities you were taught not to develop. Celeste stared as if Rosanna had begun speaking another language. That isn't entirely your fault. I was cruel to you. Rosanna stayed silent. Celeste swallowed. For years. Yes. I'm sorry. The words sounded unfamiliar in Celeste's mouth. Rosanna. I'm sorry for all of it. Rosanna did not know how to answer. An apology could not erase 12 years. It could not repair every insult, every humiliation, but it acknowledged they existed. Maybe that was a beginning. You should sleep, Rosanna said. Tomorrow will be difficult enough. Celeste stood. Before leaving, she hesitated. Thank you for lying to get Mother away from me. Then she walked down the corridor. Rosanna continued toward the servants' dormitory. Her thoughts refused to settle. Cameron's attention. Nidita's impossible mate theory. Celeste apologizing. Patricia's threats. She had almost reached her room when footsteps came behind her. Rosanna Freridman. She knew the voice now. Rosanna turned. Cameron walked toward her through the dim corridor. He had removed his ceremonial cloak. In the low light, his eyes seemed almost luminous. Alpha King. Rosanna curtsied. Is something wrong? Walk with me. It was not a request. Cameron led her through several quiet corridors. They entered a courtyard Rosanna had never seen. A fountain murmured at its center. Night-blooming flowers scented the air. Nearly full moonlight painted the stones silver. I saw what you did, Cameron said. Rosanna stiffened. With Celeste. I didn't intend to interfere. You protected her from her mother. Rosanna's mouth went dry. Despite the fact that Celeste has never treated you kindly. Cameron faced her. You had every reason to walk away. He studied her. Why didn't you? I don't know. It was the second time Rosanna had given that answer tonight. It felt like the right thing to do. The right thing. Cameron repeated it slowly. Even when leaving would have cost you nothing. Even when she was experiencing the consequences of her own behavior. It was exactly what a Luna should be capable of doing. Rosanna went completely still. Cameron continued. Seeing beyond the immediate conflict. Understanding that cruelty often creates more cruelty. Recognizing when breaking that cycle matters. Rosanna's mind scrambled. I'm not. No. Cameron's tone remained calm. You are not participating in the selection. Each fact came plainly. You have no wolf, you're a servant. You possess no political standing, no powerful family connections. The familiar shame returned. Cameron's voice softened. You demonstrated more leadership in one unplanned moment than many competitors have shown through days of performances. Rosanna gripped the fountain edge. Alpha King, I don't understand. Don't you? No. Her voice cracked. I'm a servant. I clean floors. I arrange hair. I disappear when I'm not needed. She swallowed. That is what I am. Cameron stepped closer. What if it isn't? Rosanna stopped breathing. What if other wolves forced you to become invisible because they were afraid of what might happen if anyone actually saw you? That's not. Rosanna shook her head. You don't know me. I know you love books, even though you're rarely allowed to read. Rosanna stared. I know your hands are scarred and blistered from labor. Cameron's eyes moved to them. I know you flinch when voices rise, which means you've been exposed to enough anger that your body expects pain before your mind does. Rosanna's throat tightened. I know you're intelligent enough to prepare 2 competitors for trials you'll never be permitted to enter. He moved one step closer. I know you remain kind when kindness costs you. Cameron stopped. And I know. Something changed in his expression. He didn't finish. What? Rosanna whispered. What else? Cameron lifted one hand. For one breath, Rosanna thought he might touch her face. He didn't. Instead, he lowered it. You should sleep. Tomorrow's trial is physical. Your pack members will require help preparing. The abrupt change left Rosanna disoriented. Yes, Alpha King, she curtsied. Thank you for the conversation. Rosanna turned. Rosanna. She looked back. Cameron held her gaze, and for the first time, the emotion in his golden eyes looked almost like longing. You deserve better than what you were given. I hope someday you understand that. Then he disappeared inside the palace. Rosanna stayed beside the fountain. You deserve better. The Alpha King believed that. The most powerful wolf in the territories believed Rosanna Friedman deserved something besides endurance. She returned to the dormitory on unsteady legs, collapsed onto her mattress without changing. Around her, other servants slept. No one knew the earthquake moving through Rosanna's mind. What if you were forced into invisibility? She had always believed the universe made her insignificant when it denied her a wolf. But Cameron Livingston looked at her as if she mattered. That might have been the most dangerous thing ever to happen to Rosanna, or the first sign of something she had stopped allowing herself to believe in. Tomorrow, she suspected, would make everything more complicated. Chapter 7. Torn Silk and Royal Protection. Morning came far too quickly. Rosanna woke, still hearing Cameron's words inside her mind. You deserve better than what you were given. They had followed her through her dreams. She dressed and went to breakfast, exhausted despite having slept. Everywhere she went, servants and pack members discussed the trial of courage scheduled for that evening. Rumor claimed the challenge would happen inside the forests surrounding Royal Pack territory. You look awful, Nidita told her at breakfast. I didn't sleep well. Nightmares? Rosanna looked at her porridge. Something worse. Nidita waited. Dreams that felt too much like hope. Nidita's expression softened, but she did not push. Rosanna spent the morning expecting something bad. Patricia's threats remained unfinished. Celeste's elimination had given the Luna another reason to find someone to blame. Rosanna had served that purpose for 12 years. But first came work. Alicia had advanced. She needed clothing for a physical challenge. Rosanna entered Alicia's chamber and found both sisters there. Alicia sat at her vanity. Celeste lay across the bed, staring toward the ceiling. There you are, Alicia said. I need something practical for tonight. Athletic, but still feminine. Rosanna opened the wardrobe. The Alpha King is testing courage. Whatever he chooses will probably require movement. I refuse to look weak. Yes, Lady Alicia. Rosanna selected several possibilities. Riding clothes. A modified hunting dress. Leather trousers with a fitted tunic. Mother came this morning, Celeste said suddenly. Her voice sounded empty. Alicia's shoulders tightened. She says I disgrace the family. Celeste continued staring upward. When we return to Silver Crest, I'm confined to the estate for 6 months. No social events, no visitors, nothing except isolation so I can think about the shame I caused. Rosanna looked toward her. I'm sorry. Celeste gave a bitter laugh. Are you? She rolled her head toward Rosanna. Why would you be? Isn't this what I deserve? Karma for how I treated people? That isn't how I see it. Then you're kinder than I ever was. Celeste turned away. Leave me alone, both of you. I don't want pity. Alicia chose the leather trousers and tunic. Then she dismissed Rosanna with instructions to return 2 hours before the trial. Rosanna left gladly. She spent much of the afternoon inside the library. Cameron had ordered that she was allowed to use it. That was what she told herself. Part of her hoped he might appear again. He did not. Rosanna lost herself inside a history of ancient Luna selections. Centuries earlier, they had been brutal. Physical combat, endurance tests, challenges where weaker competitors sometimes died. Fertility and strength were valued above almost everything. Modern selections were gentler, focused more on partnership and compatibility. Yet one belief remained unchanged. A Luna must be worthy of standing beside an Alpha, strong, intelligent, powerful. And, traditionally, she had to possess a wolf. Rosanna closed the book. One day earlier, she had accepted her place. Then Cameron had suggested her place might have been assigned by people who benefited from keeping her small. Now Rosanna could not erase the possibility. Late afternoon arrived. She returned to Alicia. Alicia paced like a trapped predator. Finally. Braid my hair tightly. Nothing complicated. I need it secure. Rosanna began. Her fingers moved automatically. Alicia watched herself in the mirror. Do you think I can win? Rosanna paused. Alicia almost never asked anyone for opinions. The entire selection, Alicia clarified. Do you think Cameron might choose me? You're intelligent, beautiful. You've already survived one trial. That isn't an answer. Rosanna met Alicia's eyes through the mirror. I think the Alpha King wants something very specific. Like what? Rosanna continued braiding. Compassion. Alicia's face tightened slightly. Genuine kindness. The ability to look beyond rank and see the person underneath it. Rosanna immediately added, but I don't know. Alicia remained silent. Then she said, he spoke to you last night. Rosanna's hands stopped. I saw you in the courtyard. He was just, don't lie. Alicia turned. The Alpha King does not wander around having private conversations with servants for entertainment. Her gaze sharpened. What did he want? He thanked me for helping earlier. Nothing else? No. Alicia watched her. Because from where I stood, it looked very different. Rosanna forced her hands to move again. It looked as if the most powerful alpha alive was paying very close attention to a wolfless servant. I'm sure you misunderstood. Rosanna's heart accelerated. There are nearly 100 she-wolves here specifically competing for him. Why would he spend his attention on me? That is what I want to know. Alicia turned fully. You aren't competing. You cannot compete. So whatever game you believe you're playing, I'm not playing anything. The firmness in Rosanna's voice surprised them both. I'm doing exactly what I've always done, serving your family, staying quiet, existing at the edge of a world that has never had room for me. Alicia's expression changed. Not gentler. More calculating. He asked Father about you. Rosanna froze. What? Before the trial yesterday, he asked who you were, why a wolfless girl was serving Silvercrest. What did Alpha Douglas say? That you were an orphan he accepted out of charity, that you'd lived with us since childhood, that you were loyal despite your limitations. Alicia's mouth tightened, and Cameron looked at Father as if he had confessed to something shameful. Rosanna's pulse hammered, as if bringing an orphan home and turning her into a servant was not charity. Lady Alicia, finish my hair. Rosanna obeyed. Then Alicia added quietly, and stay away from him. Rosanna looked at her reflection. Whatever you think is happening cannot be real. You have no wolf. Each word was familiar. You don't belong in his world. Rosanna secured the braid. Alicia stood. You're dismissed. Rosanna left. The palace was chaotic as evening approached. Servants carried equipment toward the forest. Royal wolves moved in groups toward the challenge site. Visiting alphas offered advice to their daughters. Rosanna followed at the edge of the crowd. The trial would occur in a clearing approximately half a mile from the palace. Torches surrounded the area. A raised platform held seats for alphas and high-ranking guests. Smaller platforms had been arranged for servants. Rosanna found a place among Royal Omegas. 70 remaining competitors stood in the clearing wearing practical clothing. Alicia waited near the front, focused, determined. Cameron emerged from the forest with his beta and several warriors. He wore hunting leathers. The clothing made him appear even more dangerous. His golden eyes reflected firelight. The trial of courage tests your ability to face fear. His voice carried through the clearing. To move beyond what you believe your limits are. He looked over the candidates. And to show the kind of courage true leadership requires. Cameron gestured toward the dark forest. The challenge is simple to explain and difficult to complete. He pointed behind him. I designed a course through these woods. You will face physical obstacles, decisions requiring judgment, and situations designed to test your nerve. The women listened. Your goal is to reach a marker deep inside the forest and return with one of the silver tokens stored there. Cameron paused. There are 40 tokens. Murmurs immediately spread. 70 competitors. 40 tokens. Yet only 30 would ultimately advance. The course may be completed in human or wolf form. If you wish to shift, do so. If you cannot, you will not be penalized. Rosanna's attention sharpened. The obstacles can be overcome either way, though the methods may differ. What matters is courage and integrity. His gaze moved across the crowd, then lifted toward Rosanna's platform. Their eyes met, only briefly, but Rosanna felt it. You have until dawn. Cameron stepped back. Begin. The competitors exploded toward the forest. Many shifted while running. Bones cracked and changed. Fur replaced skin. Wolves burst into darkness. Alicia transformed into a sleek golden wolf. Powerful hindquarters. Beautiful coat. Then she vanished among the trees. One Omega beside Rosanna whispered, "This will be entertaining." Half these women grew up surrounded by landscaped gardens. Tonight they'll meet an actual forest. Spectators settled in. No one expected the first competitors back for at least an hour. Servants distributed drinks. Alphas discussed strategy on their platform. Rosanna stared toward the trees. She could never do this. Without a wolf, she lacked speed, hearing, scent, strength. There were limitations determination could not erase. Those who cannot shift will not be penalized. Cameron's words returned. Perhaps he simply acknowledged injury, illness, conditions that temporarily prevented transformation. It could not mean someone like Rosanna. Believing otherwise would only create heartbreak. Time passed slowly. After roughly 70 minutes, the first competitor emerged. An ironwood she-wolf. She shifted back while crossing the clearing and held up a silver token. Cameron accepted it with a nod. 1. More followed, some triumphant, some exhausted. One woman limped badly with a twisted ankle, but still carried her token like treasure. 5, 10, 15, 20. Then returns slowed. 30 tokens were claimed. 35. 38. Only 2 remained. More than 30 competitors were still somewhere inside the forest. Whispers increased. Cameron sent scouts to ensure no one was seriously hurt. Then movement. A wolf burst from the tree line. She shifted while running. Silver token raised. 39. 1 remained. Several more minutes passed. Then multiple shapes appeared. 7 competitors emerged almost simultaneously. They saw one another, saw Cameron, understood what remained. Everyone began sprinting. Alicia was among them. The clearing erupted. One competitor stumbled. Another was pushed aside unintentionally in the rush. 5 remained at full speed. Alicia drove herself harder. For several seconds, Rosanna thought she would win. Then a riverside she-wolf reached Cameron a fraction of a second earlier. She thrust the final token toward him. Alicia stopped. Her entire face changed. Shock. Disbelief. Then devastation. The golden daughter of Silvercrest had been eliminated by seconds. The clearing became silent. Many had expected Alicia to reach the final trial. She was fast, strong, intelligent. But someone else had been faster. Alicia stood breathing heavily, as though her identity had broken around her and she did not know what remained. Other eliminated competitors cried or protested. Alicia barely moved. Then Patricia's voice sliced across the clearing. "This is your fault." Rosanna went cold. Patricia stood on the main platform, one arm extended, her finger pointed directly at Rosanna. If you had prepared her properly, if you had helped Alicia train instead of skulking around the palace attracting the Alpha King's inappropriate attention, She would have succeeded. Rosanna stared. Patricia's voice rose. You cursed my family the moment you entered it. Everything you touch becomes failure. Every face turned toward Rosanna. Hundreds of eyes. Curious. Confused. Some contemptuous. Some shocked. Patricia, Alpha Douglas said, clearly embarrassed. Enough. Do not defend her. Patricia descended from the platform. She has poisoned our household. She has turned my daughters against us. She pointed toward Alicia. Look, eliminated because that girl could not perform the one purpose we gave her. Nothing Patricia said made sense. Rosanna couldn't even defend herself because there was no logical accusation to answer. Patricia kept approaching. When we returned to Silvercrest, she is gone. Rosanna stopped breathing. Patricia looked toward Douglas. Do you hear me? I want her outside our home, outside our pack. I do not care where she goes or what happens after. Cast out. The words struck Rosanna like blows. No pack, no protection, no home. For an ordinary wolf, becoming rogue was dangerous. For Rosanna, it could be a death sentence. She had no claws, no transformed body, no heightened senses. Patricia, Douglas tried again. His voice lacked conviction. Rosanna heard that weakness clearly. He would not fight his mate. He never did. Patricia reached the servants' platform. Her fingers locked painfully around Rosanna's arm. Get down. Rosanna stumbled after her. Face what you've done. Every conversation had stopped. Patricia spun Rosanna toward the gathered wolves. Look at her. Rosanna's knees shook. Pathetic. Worthless. Wolfless. Patricia's eyes burned. And somehow this girl thought she could. Her hand seized the neckline of Rosanna's dress. Rosanna froze. It was an old dress, thin from years of wear. Originally, it had belonged to Rosanna's mother. Someone had altered it years ago to fit her smaller body. It was one of the last things Rosanna possessed from before Silvercrest. You don't even deserve the charity of decent clothing. Then Patricia pulled. The fabric tore. The sound seemed deafening inside the silent clearing. Rosanna's shoulder was exposed, the upper edge of her chest. Luna. Patricia pulled again. The tear traveled down the bodice. Rosanna desperately grabbed the cloth. Stop. Patricia ripped again. More fabric gave way. Rosanna tried to cover herself. Please stop. Patricia was no longer listening. Every frustration, every humiliation her daughters had suffered, every ounce of resentment toward Rosanna had narrowed into one need: destroy her. The dress hung in torn pieces. Rosanna crossed both arms over her chest. Tears blurred the clearing. Hundreds of wolves watched. She had never felt so exposed, so completely powerless. That is enough. The command was quiet. Patricia froze anyway. Cameron Livingston crossed the clearing. Wolves moved aside before him without being told. His golden eyes were colder than Rosanna had ever seen them. Not wild anger. Something more dangerous. Controlled fury. He reached Rosanna. Without hesitation, Cameron removed his cloak. Heavy royal blue fabric lined with silver embroidery. The Alpha King's personal cloak. He placed it around Rosanna. The garment almost swallowed her. Its hem nearly touched the ground. Warmth surrounded her. Cedarwood. Rain. Safety. Cameron fastened the clasp gently at her throat. His fingers barely touched her skin. Electric awareness moved through Rosanna's body. Are you hurt? His voice was suddenly quiet. Rosanna shook her head. She could not speak. Cameron turned toward Patricia. The Luna stepped backward. You will return to your chambers now. Patricia's mouth opened. You will remain there until Silvercrest leaves tomorrow morning. Cameron's voice hardened. If I find you anywhere else inside my territory, you will be removed by force. Alpha King, I was only... Do you understand? Patricia closed her mouth. She nodded. Then she walked rapidly toward the palace. Cameron faced Douglas. We will discuss this tomorrow before your departure. Douglas looked pale. For tonight, Silvercrest is dismissed from this gathering. There was no possibility of argument. Douglas gathered his wolves. One by one, the Silvercrest delegation left. Rosanna remained, alone in the clearing, wrapped in Cameron Livingston's royal cloak. Hundreds of wolves stared. The trial is concluded, Cameron announced. The 30 advancing competitors will report to the Great Hall tomorrow at sunset for instructions regarding the final event. He looked around. Everyone else is dismissed. The clearing slowly emptied. Whispers followed every departing group. Rosanna clutched the cloak closed. When almost everyone had gone, Cameron returned his attention to her. Come with me. Rosanna looked down at herself. I'm wearing your cloak. It was a ridiculous thing to say. Cameron's expression softened slightly. Yes. Everyone saw. Yes. They'll think. Rosanna couldn't finish. Let them. He gestured toward a path. Please, Rosanna. Walk with me. She followed. Because she had nowhere else to go. Because he had protected her in front of every alpha present. Because nothing about her life could return to what it had been an hour ago. They reached the moonlit courtyard from the previous night. The fountain still murmured. Flowers still perfumed the night. Rosanna pulled Cameron's cloak tighter. He stopped beside the water. I need to tell you something. Rosanna looked up. For the first time since meeting him, Cameron seemed uncertain, almost vulnerable. You probably won't believe me. Rosanna gave a shaky breath. After tonight, I think I could believe almost anything. Cameron looked directly into her eyes. You're my mate. My true mate. Rosanna's world tilted. Her knees gave way. Cameron caught her before she hit the ground. No. Her voice was barely sound. That's impossible. His hands steadied her. I don't have a wolf. There can't be a bond. The bond does not require both mates to have shifted. Cameron remained calm. It's rare, but it happens. Rosanna stared at him. I felt it the first moment I saw you. His fingers remained around her arms. I knew. Then why didn't you say anything? Because you belong to another pack. Cameron's jaw tightened. Taking another Alpha's pack member without consent could create a political conflict. In the worst circumstances, war. Rosanna tried to absorb the words. But tonight changed that. Cameron looked toward the palace. Your Alpha allowed his mate to assault you publicly. She destroyed your clothing and humiliated you before hundreds of witnesses while he failed to protect you. His expression hardened. He demonstrated that Silvercrest either cannot or will not provide the protection required by pack law. Rosanna's heart hammered. That means the agreement binding you to Silvercrest can be challenged. He looked back at her. You do not necessarily have to return with them tomorrow. Mate. Protection. Freedom. The concepts crash together. This isn't real. Rosanna shook her head. Things like this don't happen to girls like me. Why not? Cameron lifted both hands to her face. The touch was careful. Why can't you be chosen? Rosanna's breath shook. Why can't you matter? His thumbs rested near her cheeks. Why can't the universe decide that the wolfless orphan everyone dismissed is exactly the person I need? Because that isn't how the world works. Maybe not the world you knew. Cameron wiped away one of her tears. But tonight it does. Rosanna closed her eyes for one heartbeat. I'm asking you to stay. Cameron's voice softened. To choose yourself once. She opened her eyes. To let me protect you the way someone should have protected you years ago. Everyone will say I don't deserve it. Then everyone will be wrong. There was no hesitation in him. Rosanna felt terrified. I'm scared. So am I. That answer surprised her. Cameron gave a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. Terrified, actually. He looked away briefly. I have never felt this way. I spent years doubting fate, destiny, bonds people claim transcend reason. His eyes returned. Then I saw you. Rosanna's chest tightened. And I knew. Cameron stepped back just enough to give her space. If you refuse, I will respect it. If you choose Silvercrest tomorrow, I will not force you to remain here. His voice lowered. But I am asking you to stay. The courtyard seemed to spin. Perhaps it was only Rosanna's old understanding of herself collapsing. A world where she mattered. Where someone chose her. Where hope might be more than something other people received. I'll stay. The words came before fear could stop them. Cameron stared. Rosanna swallowed. I don't understand any of this. I don't know what happens next. She tightened the cloak. But I'll stay. Relief transformed Cameron's expression. Then joy. Then something like wonder. Thank you. He pulled her carefully into his arms. For trusting me. Rosanna stood completely still for one heartbeat. Then she allowed herself to lean into him. For the first time in 12 years, someone held her without demanding anything. She felt safe. Only for a moment. Perhaps only for tonight. But it was real. Cameron's cloak surrounded them both. Tomorrow would bring politics. Questions. Consequences. But tonight, Rosanna allowed herself one impossible thing. Hope. Chapter 8. The Aftermath of Choice. Rosanna woke somewhere unfamiliar. For several confused seconds she had no idea where she was. The mattress was too soft. The blankets too fine. The room too large. Then memory returned violently. The trial. Alicia losing. Patricia. Her mother's dress tearing. Cameron's cloak. And finally the words spoken under moonlight. You're my mate. Rosanna sat up. Morning light entered through enormous windows overlooking the gardens. The room was elegant but comfortable. A writing desk. Bookshelves. Several chairs. A fireplace. Cameron's royal cloak hung over one chair. Rosanna stared at it. A knock startled her. Come in. Nidita entered carrying breakfast. Fresh bread. Honey. Eggs. Cheese. Berries. Far more than Rosanna would normally eat in an entire morning. Nidita placed the tray near the window. Good morning. Her face looked suspiciously neutral. Her eyes did not. They practically glowed with excitement. The Alpha King asked me to bring breakfast. He would like to speak with you after you eat and dress. Nidita nodded toward a wardrobe. He had clothing brought from pack stores last night. Several sizes. Something should fit. Rosanna stared. Where am I? The guest wing. Nidita opened the wardrobe. This suite is usually reserved for visiting dignitaries. She paused. And occasionally potential future Lunas. Rosanna's stomach tightened. Everyone knows. It wasn't a question. About the cloak? Nidita almost laughed. The entire royal territory knows. By now, half the northern territories probably know. Rosanna covered her face briefly. When an Alpha King removes his royal cloak and places it around a woman in front of hundreds of witnesses, subtlety is no longer an option. Nidita selected several dresses. That gesture means protection. She gave Rosanna a meaningful look. And often courtship. I didn't ask for any of this. Rosanna's voice became smaller. I didn't want to cause trouble. Nidita immediately sat beside her. You did not cause what happened. Patricia attacked you, Cameron responded. Nidita squeezed her hand. The consequences belong to the person who created the situation. Rosanna stared toward the cloak. But why me? Mate bonds don't care about political convenience. Nidita shrugged. Status, rank, shifting ability. None of those necessarily matter. She smiled softly. Cameron has been waiting 28 years. Maybe fate needed that long to bring you into the same place. Rosanna couldn't process something that large. So she focused on something practical. Silvercrest is leaving this morning. Yes. Alpha Douglas and Patricia will expect me to go. Cameron is discussing that with them now. Rosanna turned. He requested a meeting with Douglas at dawn. Nidita stood. Which is why you need to eat. You'll likely be called once the political details are clear. Political details. Yesterday, Rosanna had been a servant. Today her existence required negotiation between alphas. She forced herself out of bed. Her body still hurt from the previous night. Her mind felt even worse. She ate mechanically while Nadita chose a simple forest green dress. This. Nadita held it up. Formal enough for a meeting, not so elaborate that you'll feel ridiculous. Rosanna changed behind a screen. The dress fit perfectly. Every item now belonged to the royal pack. Clothing, food, the room. She was already accepting their protection in small ways. Nadita pointed toward a mirror. Rosanna approached cautiously. She barely recognized herself. The green dress made her visible. Her dark hair fell freely around her shoulders. There were no cleaning cloths in her hands. No bucket. No bent posture. She looked younger. Or perhaps simply less defeated. "You're beautiful," Nadita said. Rosanna immediately looked down. "You always were." Nadita smiled. "The difference is that now you might eventually believe it." Another knock came. A huge royal warrior stood outside. Dark hair threaded with silver. Scars marked his face and hands. Miss Friedman. Rosanna looked behind herself instinctively. He meant her. "The Alpha King requests your presence in his study. I'm assigned to escort you." Miss Friedman. Not girl. Not servant. Not stray. Rosanna followed. Everyone they passed stared. Some looked curious. Some openly fascinated. A few disapproved. News traveled quickly through packs. Rosanna had become the center of a scandal. The Alpha King's study occupied the western wing. Heavy doors displayed carvings of ancient battles and alliances. The warrior knocked, then opened the door after Cameron responded. Rosanna stepped inside. Maps covered the walls. Books and papers filled shelves and tables. But the people inside mattered more. Cameron stood behind the desk. His beta was beside him. Alpha Douglas and Luna Patricia sat opposite. Patricia looked furious. Douglas looked exhausted. "Rosanna." Cameron's voice gentled slightly. "Thank you for coming. Sit, please." A chair waited. Not beside Patricia and Douglas. Slightly apart. Rosanna sat. "We've been discussing your circumstances," Cameron began. "Alpha Douglas confirmed that you have been a Silver Crest member since age 5, after your parents were killed." "Yes, Alpha King." "And during those 12 years, what position did you hold?" Rosanna glanced at Douglas. "I served his household." Cameron's eyes sharpened. "Explain." "I cleaned, cooked when necessary, assisted Luna Patricia and her daughters." "Served." Cameron repeated the word. "You were not educated as a pack member?" "No." "Not trained?" "No." "Not given opportunities to develop skills outside domestic labor?" Rosanna hesitated. "No, Alpha King." "She received shelter," Patricia interrupted. "Food, clothing, protection. More than many orphans receive. Shelter exchanged for labor," Cameron replied. The temperature in his voice seemed to fall. "And protection that failed rather spectacularly when you attacked her last night." Patricia's jaw clenched. "The girl has caused trouble since." "The girl has a name," Cameron spoke softly. That somehow made the warning stronger. "Rosanna Friedman." He looked directly at Patricia. "As of last night, she is under my personal protection. Any disrespect toward her from this point forward will be interpreted as disrespect toward me." Silence filled the study. Patricia looked furious enough to explode. But even she understood the danger of challenging Cameron directly. "We understand," Douglas finally said. "Good." Cameron returned his attention to Rosanna. "Normally, transferring a member between packs requires negotiation and compensation." Rosanna listened. "But your circumstances are unusual. You were taken into Silvercrest as charity. You were not formally adopted into the Alpha's family. You have no blood tie binding you to them," he continued. And last night established clear evidence that remaining there may place you at risk. Transfer? Rosanna whispered. If you choose it. Cameron walked around the desk. This decision belongs to you. He looked at her, not Douglas. Not Patricia. You may return with Silvercrest this morning. Patricia's posture relaxed slightly. Or you may remain here and request formal transfer into the Royal Pack. Rosanna stared at him. I want you to understand both choices. Cameron leaned against the desk. If you return to Silvercrest, Royal Pack law severely limits my ability to interfere in another alpha's internal discipline. His eyes flicked toward Patricia. What happened last night was abusive and humiliating, but technically does not meet every requirement for criminal intervention. Rosanna understood immediately. Patricia could hurt her in quieter ways. Ways no outside alpha could prove. If you stay, Cameron continued, you will receive full Royal Pack membership. Patricia stiffened. You'll have housing, work appropriate to your abilities, education if you want it. Rosanna's breath caught. And you will remain under my direct protection. His tone hardened. Any wolf who harms you will answer to me. Rosanna swallowed. What would you expect from me? Cameron frowned slightly. For what? For all of that. Rosanna gestured vaguely. Protection, housing, everything. Nothing you do not freely choose to give. His answer came immediately. This is not a transaction. Rosanna looked at him. I'm giving you a choice you should have received years ago. Douglas spoke for the first time in several minutes. There is more to this. Cameron looked toward him. The cloak. Douglas's voice remained careful. You didn't merely protect her last night. Giving Rosanna your royal cloak was a public claim. Rosanna's pulse accelerated. You signaled that you were considering her as a mate. Yes. Cameron did not hesitate. I did. Patricia made a small, furious sound. I believe Rosanna is my mate. Cameron kept his eyes on Rosanna. I felt the bond when I first saw her. He raised one hand before she could react. But recognizing a bond does not give me ownership over her choices. Rosanna went still. If she transfers here, we explore that connection only at the pace Rosanna wants. Cameron's voice remained steady. And if she ultimately decides she does not want a romantic relationship with me, her Royal Pack membership and protection remain exactly the same. Rosanna stared. He was offering safety without demanding love in payment. Douglas's expression became unreadable. Patricia's became murderous. Can I think about it? Rosanna whispered. No. Patricia surged forward. You will return with us. You belong to Silvercrest. Cameron's eyes darkened. Patricia kept going. You have duties. You don't abandon your pack simply because you manipulated the Alpha King into... Luna Patricia. Cameron's voice became glacial. The room froze. One more word. And I will have you physically removed from royal territory and formally declare you unwelcome on Royal Pack land. His gold eyes held hers. Test me. Patricia shut her mouth. Cameron looked back at Rosanna. You have until noon. How long is that? 4 hours. Rosanna nodded. Spend those hours considering what you want. His expression softened. Not Patricia, not Douglas, not me. Cameron spoke slowly. You. Rosanna felt the word settle somewhere deep. What kind of life do you want? Where should I go? Anywhere. Cameron gestured beyond the study. Library, gardens, grounds, wherever you feel comfortable. He gave her the smallest smile. You are not a prisoner, Rosanna. Then his expression became more serious. You are a guest, deciding whether you want to become family. The meeting ended. Douglas and Patricia were escorted away. Cameron's beta went with them. The study door closed. Rosanna remained alone with Cameron. I'm sorry, he said, for making everything complicated. Don't. Rosanna surprised herself. Don't apologize for being the first person in 12 years who made me feel like I matter. Cameron went still. Even if I decide I cannot accept everything you're offering. Rosanna swallowed. You saw me. Cameron crossed the room and took both her hands. Awareness moved instantly through her arms. You are seen. His voice was low. By me. Rosanna looked into his eyes. And whatever brought you into this territory at the exact moment I needed to find you. He squeezed her hands. I hope you stay. For the first time, Cameron looked openly vulnerable. I hope it enough that it scares me. He slowly released her. But whatever you decide, you deserved better long before you met me. Rosanna left the study almost dazed. The palace looked different. Yesterday it had been somewhere temporary. Today it might become home. Her feet carried her automatically toward the library. She sank into a chair. 4 hours. Option 1. Return to Silvercrest. Patricia's punishment. More servitude. More invisibility. Perhaps eventual exile. Option 2. Royal Pack. Safety. Membership. Books. Work that might mean something. And a possible mate bond with Cameron Livingston. Logically, the answer seemed obvious. Emotionally, it wasn't. Silvercrest had been cruel. But Silvercrest was also the only home Rosanna remembered. Leaving meant cutting the last tie to the life she had shared with her parents. What did she want? Cameron's question returned. Not what should she do, not what was expected. What did Rosanna actually want? She closed her eyes. She imagined waking inside a room where no one shouted orders. Walking into the library whenever she wanted. Learning. Working at something that used her mind. Standing beside Cameron without being afraid he might suddenly decide she wasn't worth his attention. Being wanted. Being loved. The wanting hurt. Patricia had spent 12 years teaching Rosanna that wanting more was evidence of ingratitude. Wolfless orphans did not deserve fairy tales. Cameron disagreed. Perhaps for once, Rosanna could trust someone else's judgment over Patricia's. The thought almost made her laugh. 4 days ago, Rosanna had been scrubbing floors. Now she was debating whether to accept protection from the Alpha King. Absurdity apparently governed the universe. Rosanna looked around the library. Knowledge, comfort, opportunity. This life could be hers. Not because she stole it. Because someone had finally allowed her to choose. The answer became clear. Rosanna stood. She knew where Cameron would probably be. Nadita had mentioned his morning training routine. Rosanna followed the sounds of combat until she reached the warrior grounds. Cameron stood inside the training ring, sparring with his beta. Both moved with astonishing speed. Years of fighting together showed in every exchange. The beta anticipated Cameron. Cameron anticipated him. Then Cameron swept his legs and pinned him in seconds. Warriors applauded. Cameron offered his beta a hand. Both laughed. Then his eyes found Rosanna. Everything in his expression changed. Hope, fear, wanting. Rosanna walked toward him. Every warrior began watching. Cameron met her at the edge of the ring. 4 hours aren't finished. I know. Rosanna took a breath. I don't need them. Silence spread across the training grounds. I know what I want. Cameron waited. I want to stay. His breathing changed. I want to transfer to the Royal Pack. Rosanna forced herself to keep going. I want your protection. She looked directly into his eyes. And I want to understand whatever exists between us. Her voice softened. Because you were right. Cameron went completely still. I felt something from the moment I saw you too. Rosanna gave a nervous breath. I just didn't know what it was. Wonder transformed his face. You're certain? Yes. Once the transfer is finalized, you will be Royal Pack. Cameron stepped closer. There is no simple way back. I know. Mine to protect. Rosanna's chest tightened. Mine too. Yours. She interrupted him. If you'll take all of me. Rosanna gave him a nervous smile. The limitations. The complications. The complete absence of a wolf. Especially those. Cameron pulled her into his arms. Then, to Rosanna's shock, he lifted her from the ground and spun her. Royal warriors erupted into cheers and howls. When Cameron placed her down again, both his hands framed her face. "You just changed my life, Rosanna Friedman." Tears blurred her vision. "That's interesting." Rosanna smiled. "Because you changed mine too." Cameron kissed her forehead. Gentle, almost reverent. "Welcome home." Home. Rosanna had spent 17 years living inside spaces that tolerated her. Now she had chosen somewhere that wanted her. For once, she allowed herself to believe the difference was real. Chapter 9. The Final Trial. News traveled through royal territory faster than Rosanna could comprehend. By midday, everyone seemed to know. The Alpha King had recognized a mate. She was Wolfless. She had been a servant. She came from Silver Crest. She had been publicly humiliated. And Cameron had placed his cloak around her in front of half the northern territories. Rosanna spent the afternoon moving through a strange state between disbelief and reality. Nidita helped move the few belongings from Rosanna's cloth bag into the guest suite. The entire process felt almost ridiculous. Everything Rosanna owned fit on one chair. "You're not listening." Rosanna blinked. "What?" Nidita sighed dramatically. "I've been explaining tonight for 5 minutes. Sorry. You're processing. Yes. Well, process quickly." Nidita opened the wardrobe. "The final trial still happens tonight." Rosanna frowned. "But Cameron already—" "Tradition." Nidita shrugged. "The 30 finalists earned the right to complete the ceremony." Then she looked pointedly at Rosanna. "And since you are now the Alpha King's acknowledged mate, you cannot hide in the servants' gallery." Rosanna's stomach tightened. "Where am I supposed to sit?" Nidita smiled. "The dais." Rosanna stared. "Beside Cameron." "No." "Yes." Nidita pulled out a midnight blue dress. "This should work." Rosanna looked at the silk. 4 days earlier she had prepared Alicia and Celeste for a selection. Now someone else was preparing Rosanna to sit beside the Alpha King. "I don't know how to be that person." Nidita paused. "What person?" "The woman people watch." Rosanna looked down at herself. "The one who sits on the dais instead of hiding along the wall. Then learn." Nidita's answer was simple. "You learned how to survive Silver Crest. You can learn this too." The afternoon became preparation. Nidita styled Rosanna's dark hair into soft waves pinned with silver clips. The dress fit beautifully. When Nidita finished, she stepped back. "You look perfect." Rosanna immediately opened her mouth. "No." Nidita pointed at her. "Whatever argument you're about to make about not deserving this, save it." Rosanna closed her mouth. "The Alpha King chose you." Nidita smiled. "That means something." A knock came. Cameron stood outside. He wore formal black with silver embroidery marking his rank. His eyes widened slightly when he saw Rosanna. "You look—" Rosanna waited. Cameron seemed almost annoyed with language. "Breathtaking." Heat rose into Rosanna's face. Nidita did it. "I helped," Nidita said cheerfully. "But I had excellent material." She collected her tools. Then she leaned toward Rosanna on the way out. "Stop making yourself smaller. It's unbecoming of a future Luna." The door closed. Rosanna stared after her. Cameron smiled. "Ready?" "No." "Good." Rosanna looked at him. "That is not reassuring." Cameron offered his arm. "Tonight will be intense." His expression became serious. "The final trial. Formal conclusion of the selection, and our bond has already become public." Rosanna swallowed. "Some competitors will resent you. They spent days fighting for something you received without competing. I'm terrified." "That makes 2 of us." Rosanna gave a weak smile. "At least this time I'm terrified in a beautiful dress." Cameron laughed softly. Then his face changed. "I want you beside me tonight." He looked directly at her. More than that, I need you there. Rosanna's heart tightened. Stay close. Anyone with a problem speaks to me. They walked through the palace together. Cameron's hand occasionally rested at the small of Rosanna's back. The gesture sent warmth through her body. Wolves stopped to stare. Some smiled. Others looked scandalized. The great hall had been transformed again. A ceremonial dais dominated the front. Rows of seats waited for alphas. Pack banners hung overhead. The 30 finalists stood in their finest gowns. Every one of them knew something had changed. No one could have missed what Cameron's cloak meant. But ceremony still mattered. They had competed honorably. Tradition required a conclusion. Cameron led Rosanna to the dais. Her seat stood directly beside his. Every wolf understood the statement. Rosanna searched the crowd. She found Alicia among the eliminated competitors. Their eyes met. For once, Alicia did not glare. She offered one small nod. Not friendship, not forgiveness, perhaps only acceptance. Cameron stood. The hall silenced. We gather for the final stage of this selection. His voice filled the room. The 30 she-wolves before us demonstrated intelligence, courage, and dedication. He looked toward them. They represent their packs with honor. Then he paused. But this selection was never simply about finding a capable political partner. Every wolf listened. It was about finding my mate. Rosanna's heartbeat accelerated. The person fate chose before either of us understood what that choice meant. Cameron turned slightly. And I have found her. Whispers moved across the hall. Rosanna Friedman is not who tradition would predict. He gestured toward her. She is Wolfless. Rosanna forced herself not to shrink. She has no political connections. Another breath. She was not raised for power. Cameron's eyes stayed on her. She received no formal leadership training. Every insecurity she possessed seemed to be spoken aloud. By traditional measures, she should appear completely unqualified to become Luna of the royal pack. Rosanna's hands tightened. And yet, Cameron's voice softened. She possesses everything I was searching for. The hall became still. Compassion even toward wolves who have hurt her. Rosanna thought of Celeste. Intelligence that survived despite being denied education. The library. Courage that has nothing to do with claws. His golden eyes held hers. And kindness that remains intact despite every reason she was given to become cruel. Cameron faced Rosanna fully. She is, in every way that matters, the partner I want beside me. Rosanna could barely breathe. Rosanna Friedman. He extended his hand. Will you accept? The room disappeared around her. Will you stand beside me as my mate? Cameron waited. And as Luna of the royal pack. Rosanna's legs shook as she stood. Will you help me lead with wisdom, compassion, and strength that builds instead of dominates? Every face turned toward her. A few days ago, attention like this would have destroyed Rosanna. But invisibility had never protected her. It had merely hidden her suffering. Yes. Her voice came softly at first. Then Rosanna repeated it. Yes. Clearer. Stronger. I accept. The hall erupted. Royal wolves cheered. Some visiting wolves remained quiet. The finalists applauded politely, despite obvious disappointment. Cameron reached Rosanna and took both her hands. By the authority entrusted to me as Alpha King of the Royal Pack and leader of the Northern Territories Council. His voice carried through the hall. I declare Rosanna Friedman my chosen mate and future Luna. The selection is concluded. Cameron removed something from his pocket. A ring. Silver formed into intricate interlocking patterns. A blue stone rested at the center. This has belonged to Royal Lunas for 300 years, Cameron said quietly. Rosanna stared. It represents duty. He took her hand. But also belonging. Cameron slid it onto her finger. And home. The ring fit perfectly. You will never face the world alone again. The instant the ring settled, Rosanna felt something. Not the violent transformation she had spent years waiting for. No bones changed. No wolf awakened. Instead, something opened, like a locked door turning silently on its hinges. Rosanna gasped. Hundreds of presences surrounded her. Not voices, not exactly thoughts. Connections. Threads. The royal pack. She could feel them. You feel it. Cameron looked stunned. The pack bond. Rosanna stared at him. How? Because the bond is deeper than physical form. He lifted her hand. You were meant to belong here. Cameron kissed the ring. Welcome to the royal pack. His voice softened. Luna Rosanna. The title felt strange, yet somewhere beneath the strangeness, it fit. The ceremony continued. Cameron personally acknowledged all 30 finalists. Each received a gift chosen according to her interests. Jewelry, books, other treasures. No one was dismissed as a loser. Their effort was respected. Then ceremony became celebration. Food appeared. Music began. Wolves filled the hall. Rosanna was surrounded by royal pack members eager to meet her. Warriors, healers, craftspeople, scholars, elders. Names blurred together. Cameron remained nearby, not suffocating her, simply present. Breathe, he whispered when they briefly found space. I've forgotten almost everyone's name. That's normal. I think I'm drowning in people being nice to me. A smile touched Cameron's mouth. They're welcoming you. I know. That's why it feels strange. Rosanna looked at him. No one expects you to master this tonight. He squeezed her hand. Give yourself time. They danced later. Rosanna had never learned formal dancing. At first, she stepped incorrectly. Cameron guided her without teasing. Eventually, her body followed the rhythm. She met visiting alphas. Some congratulated her sincerely. Others clearly did not. Royal elders blessed the bond. Through everything, the Luna's ring remained on Rosanna's finger. The pack bond hummed quietly behind her awareness. After midnight, guests began leaving. The Silver Crest delegation had already gone. Rosanna felt something when she heard that. Not regret. Grief. The complicated kind that came from closing a painful chapter that had still contained most of her life. Cameron walked her to the guest suite. Technically, he explained, it could eventually become their shared suite. But he would maintain separate rooms for as long as she wanted. They stopped outside the door. How are you? Rosanna almost laughed. Honestly? Always. Terrified. She counted silently. Overwhelmed, grateful, confused. Cameron waited. And I feel as though I accidentally stepped into another woman's life. Rosanna looked toward the door. Any moment someone might realize the mistake. That won't happen. You can't know that. I know what I chose. Cameron lifted a hand to her cheek. I can promise that anyone who questions your worth answers to me. Rosanna leaned slightly into his palm. And I can promise you are exactly where I want you. His thumb moved gently across her skin. I see you, Rosanna. Her eyes closed. Completely. He lowered his voice. And I choose you because of who you are, not despite it. Rosanna opened her eyes again. I don't know how to be Luna. Then don't know yet. Cameron smiled. I only know how to survive. We start there. He placed his forehead against hers. Then we build everything else together. Rosanna's breath synchronized with his. You aren't alone anymore. His voice became quieter. Whatever comes next, remember that. Thank you. Rosanna's eyes burned. For seeing me. Cameron stepped back. Thank you for being brave enough to stay. He kissed her forehead. Rest. Rosanna nodded. Tomorrow begins Luna training. She made a face. Cameron smiled. Nidita and several others volunteered. We won't throw you into leadership without preparation. What will you be doing? Political damage control. Rosanna stared. Cameron looked amused. Several alphas already requested meetings concerning my decision to choose a wolfless mate from another pack. Are they angry? Some. His expression turned dry. Apparently, I established a dangerous precedent by placing personal connection above political advantage. Rosanna almost smiled. Did you? Absolutely. Cameron leaned down and kissed her forehead again. And I would make the same choice without hesitation. He stepped away. Good night, Luna Rosanna. Rosanna's chest tightened. Welcome home. She entered the suite. The midnight blue dress came off carefully. The Luna's ring stayed. Rosanna stood by the window. Somewhere in those gardens, Patricia had torn her dress. Somewhere inside this palace, Cameron had wrapped his cloak around her. Between those two moments, Rosanna's entire life had changed. The pack bonds surrounded her. Hundreds of wolves. Connection. Belonging. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt like being held. Rosanna climbed into bed. For the first time in years, sleep came without fear. No dreams of punishment. No Patricia. No feeling of worthlessness. Only forests. Mountains. And golden eyes that saw everything she had been taught to hide, then chose her anyway. Chapter 10. 6 months later. Spring transformed Royal Pack territory. Cherry blossoms covered the palace paths. Pink petals drifted through the air like snow. Winter had retreated from the mountains, replacing white slopes with vibrant green. Rosanna stood beside the window in the Luna's office. Her office. Even after 6 months, that thought sometimes felt unreal. She reviewed the afternoon schedule, meeting with the Pack Education Committee about expanded literacy programs, consultation with healers concerning medical access for Omega families, diplomatic dinner with 3 neighboring packs discussing trade. 6 months ago, Rosanna had been scrubbing floors. Now she helped create policy for more than 500 wolves. Some mornings, the change still felt impossible. You're glaring at that schedule, as if it personally insulted you. Rosanna turned. Cameron leaned against the doorway. He wore training clothes instead of formal alpha attire. He had spent the morning with royal warriors. Even after 6 months of marriage, seeing him could still interrupt Rosanna's heartbeat. I'm not glaring. You are. I'm concentrating. That little line between your eyebrows says otherwise. Cameron crossed the room. He gently pressed his thumb against the spot. What happened? Nothing. Rosanna looked toward the schedule. I just have 17 things to finish, and approximately 12 useful hours. Delegate. I could. You should. Rosanna gave him a look. But then I would spend all evening wondering whether everything was completed correctly. And at 3 a.m, Cameron added, I'd find you trying to redo tasks other people already finished. Rosanna leaned into him despite herself. I'm learning. You are. Cameron wrapped his arms around her waist. Last month you would have personally attempted all 17 tasks. He smiled. This month you admit delegation exists as a theoretical concept. Rosanna raised an eyebrow. Your faith in me is inspiring. I call it realistic optimism. He studied her. But something else is bothering you. After 6 months of marriage, hiding emotions from Cameron had become increasingly difficult. The mate bond strengthened every month. I received a letter from Celeste. Cameron's expression changed. What does she want? Nothing exactly. Rosanna moved toward her desk and picked up the letter. She's finally being allowed limited social privileges. Cameron remembered immediately. After the 6 months of confinement, Rosanna nodded. She says it was difficult. That description hardly covered what Rosanna suspected. She asked whether we could correspond regularly. Cameron waited. She wants advice on dealing with Patricia's expectations. Rosanna set the letter down. The request had surprised her. She and Celeste had never been friends. For most of their lives, they had barely been people to each other. Mistress and servant. Cruelty and endurance. But something had shifted after the trial of wit. Rosanna had intervened when Patricia attacked Celeste verbally. Celeste had apologized. Perhaps that moment created the smallest possibility of a different relationship. "What did you answer?" Cameron asked. "I haven't." Rosanna folded her arms. "Part of me wants to help." "That sounds like you." "She's 17 now. Patricia's punishments are cruel." Rosanna looked down. "But another part of me remembers everything Celeste did." Cameron took her hand. "Both reactions are valid." Rosanna looked at him. "You do not owe her forgiveness." He spoke carefully. "If writing to Celeste harms you or drags you into Silvercrest's problems, you can refuse." Rosanna nodded. "But," Cameron smiled faintly, "but you are not particularly good at ignoring someone who is suffering." Rosanna almost protested. "It's one of the things I love about you." His thumb moved across her knuckles. "And one of the things that worries me." Rosanna sighed. "Whatever you choose, make sure it comes from desire." He looked directly at her. Not obligation. That distinction still mattered. Rosanna had spent most of her life unable to tell the difference. "I think I'll draft something." She looked at Celeste's letter. "Then wait a few days before deciding whether to send it." "Reasonable." Cameron glanced toward the schedule. "Speaking of avoiding difficult decisions, did you read the Northern Territories Council request?" Rosanna groaned. "I was hoping you had forgotten. They want you to speak at the spring summit." "I know. About non-traditional leadership." "I know. And wolfless participation in pack society." "I know." Cameron's amusement increased. Rosanna sat behind the desk. "They want me to stand in front of conservative alphas and explain why centuries of assumptions about rank and shifting ability may be wrong. Essentially, which will make several powerful wolves angry." "Almost certainly." Cameron sounded far too cheerful. Rosanna stared at him. "But it could also help people." His expression became serious. Every wolfless wolf, every omega, every pack member told birth status determines usefulness. He crouched beside her chair. "But that does not mean you are obligated to become a symbol." Rosanna looked toward him. "You're allowed to simply be Luna here." His voice softened. "You don't have to carry every marginalized wolf in the territories on your back. But if speaking helps, then speak." Cameron squeezed her hand. "When you're ready." Rosanna's eyes burned unexpectedly. "When sharing your story gives you strength instead of draining you." He wiped away one tear. 6 months ago, you struggled to believe you deserved basic respect." Rosanna gave a watery laugh. "Now you're running a pack and trying to save everyone." Cameron smiled. "Progress." Then his expression grew gentle. "But you are still healing from 17 years of trauma." He brushed her cheek. "Give yourself time." A knock interrupted them. Nidita entered carrying a leather portfolio. Her excitement was obvious. "Sorry, but you need to see this." She placed the portfolio on Rosanna's desk and opened it. Architectural plans. Rosanna immediately leaned forward. The community center. The final designs. Nidita pointed. Classrooms for literacy programs. Another section. Public library accessible to every rank. Another. Meeting areas for omegas and lower-ranking pack members. She grinned. "And the nursery you requested for working parents?" Rosanna stared. It was everything she had imagined. A space where wolves could access education without navigating palace hierarchy. A place where wolfless members and omegas might find resources. Community. Support. The Royal Council had approved funding the previous month. Now lines on paper were about to become stone and timber. "When can construction begin?" "Next week if you approve these." Nidita tapped the plans. "They estimate 6 months." Rosanna smiled. "Approve them. Officially?" "Officially." Rosanna looked again at the drawings. "Let's build it." Nidita beamed. "I'll notify them." She started to leave, then stopped. "One more thing." Rosanna waited. A young wolf arrived from Moonwater. What does she want? She asked to speak with you personally. Nidita's expression became more serious. She says she heard stories about a Luna who leads without a wolf. Rosanna and Cameron exchanged glances. She wants to know whether they're true. This had begun happening more often. Wolves came from other territories, mostly wolfless, some omegas. Some simply people who felt trapped by traditional hierarchy. They wanted to see Rosanna themselves. Send her in. Nidita nodded. And Nidita? Yes? Thank you. Rosanna smiled. I couldn't do half of this without you. Nidita waved dismissively. You absolutely could. You'd simply be horribly disorganized and forget meals. She disappeared. Minutes later, she returned with a girl, perhaps 16. Thin, dark-haired, a worn traveling bag clutched against her body. Her eyes held an exhaustion Rosanna recognized immediately. Luna Rosanna. The girl lowered her head. Thank you for meeting me. Rosanna smiled carefully. What's your name? Helen Ashley. Rosanna's memory caught. Cameron recognized it first. You were the servant at the selection. The girl looked at him. The one Celeste nearly struck. Rosanna stared. Helen. The spilled wine. The first confrontation. The moment that had quietly begun changing everything. I thought you belonged to Royal Pack. I was temporary staff. Helen twisted her hands. They hired additional workers during the selection. She swallowed. I'm actually Moonwater. Then her voice dropped. And I don't have a wolf. Rosanna understood immediately. My pack tolerates me. Helen's eyes shone. Barely. She looked toward Rosanna. When I heard about you, her voice shook. A wolfless Luna leading one of the strongest packs in the territories. Helen took a breath. I needed to know whether you were real. I'm real. Rosanna smiled gently. And still wolfless. Helen stared. Probably always will be. Rosanna gestured around the office. And I'm still Luna. How? Helen's tears threatened. Everyone says we can't lead. Rosanna remained silent. They say the pack bond won't accept us. Helen's breathing quickened. That we're weak. They're wrong, Cameron said. His tone was firm but kind. The pack bond works perfectly for Rosanna. Helen looked between them. Leadership is not transformation, Cameron continued. It is understanding what your people need and helping them achieve it. Helen looked directly at Rosanna. Don't you feel inadequate? The question was raw. Don't wolves question you? Rosanna nodded. Yes. Helen looked surprised. Some days more than others. Rosanna rose and walked around the desk. She sat beside Helen instead of remaining behind it. Not Luna above petitioner. Two wolfless women. I still worry I'm not enough. Rosanna took Helen's hand. But I learned something. Helen waited. Being enough does not mean possessing every ability everyone expects. Rosanna spoke slowly. It means using what you do possess with integrity. She squeezed Helen's fingers. Compassion, intelligence, judgment, courage. Helen's tears slipped free. And surrounding yourself with people whose strengths support your weaknesses. Rosanna smiled gently. Your worth does not have to use someone else's definition. Helen looked toward Cameron. That's easier when your mate is the Alpha King. The moment the words escaped, horror crossed her face. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. No. Rosanna stopped her. You're right. Helen blinked. I have protection you don't. Rosanna gestured toward the palace. Status. Resources. My path cannot simply be copied by every wolfless wolf. She leaned closer. But one truth remains. Helen waited. Not shifting does not make you worthless. Rosanna held her gaze. It does not make you less deserving of dignity. Helen looked down. I don't feel powerful. You don't need to. Rosanna smiled slightly. Being afraid and being powerful can exist at the same time. She let the words settle. What do you need, Helen? Helen's fingers tightened. Why did you really come? The girl took a trembling breath. I want to stay. Cameron became very still. I know I shouldn't ask. Helen rushed on. But I can't go back to Moonwater. She wiped her face. I can't spend my entire life being tolerated. Rosanna's chest hurt. I need somewhere I can exist without proving every day that I deserve to be there. Rosanna looked at Cameron. An entire conversation passed silently between them. Political consequences, precedent, other alphas. The possibility that Royal Pack might become a refuge. Then Cameron looked at Helen. We have an asylum procedure. Helen stared. It isn't heavily advertised. Cameron moved closer. If someone demonstrates systematic discrimination or emotional harm inside their current pack, we can petition their alpha for transfer. Helen's mouth opened. And if he refuses? Then the conversation becomes more complicated. Something in Cameron's tone suggested he was willing to have that complicated conversation. Most alphas release members who actively want to leave. It avoids forcing them to confront cultural problems they would rather ignore. Helen's expression slowly changed. So I could stay? You would need formal approval, Rosanna explained. Paperwork. She smiled. And eventually work or training that contributes to Royal Pack life. Helen nodded rapidly. But yes. Rosanna squeezed her hand. If you want to become Royal Pack, we will support your request. Helen broke. Tears came freely. Thank you. She covered her mouth. You don't understand what this means. Rosanna did. She understood exactly. The relief of hearing you may stay. Not because someone wants cheap labor. Not because your survival requires obedience. Simply because someone believes you deserve somewhere to belong. Nidita returned later and escorted Helen toward temporary transfer housing. When they were alone, Cameron sighed. This will happen again. I know. Wolfless wolves from other packs will hear about you. Rosanna looked toward the doorway where Helen disappeared. They'll come here. Cameron nodded. We need a sustainable policy. His expression became thoughtful. If Royal Pack turns into a sanctuary, traditional alphas will not be pleased. How can we refuse them? Rosanna looked at him. How can I live this life and tell someone like Helen she doesn't deserve the same chance? We probably can't. Cameron smiled faintly. Which means marginalized wolves may begin liking us very much. And conservative alphas? Much less. He shrugged. Fortunately, being popular with cruel alphas has never been one of my ambitions. Rosanna smiled. This will create problems. Yes. Cameron took her hand. The right decision often does. The right decision often does. The afternoon continued. Meetings, healers, education policy, trade, hundreds of small choices that composed leadership. But something underneath it all had changed. Rosanna's position was beginning to open doors for other wolves. That frightened her. It also gave meaning to everything she had survived. That evening, after diplomats left and the palace quieted, Rosanna walked into the gardens. Cherry blossoms glowed beneath the fading light. Somewhere among these paths, her old life had ended. Cameron found her. The mate bond made distance increasingly difficult. Not painful. Simply a quiet pull toward each other. Long day? He sat beside her on a stone bench. Long. Rosanna rested her head against his shoulder. But good. They sat quietly. I think I'll accept the council invitation. Cameron looked down. The summit? Yes. Rosanna breathed slowly. You were right. I don't need to represent everyone. She watched petals fall. But I can tell my story. Cameron remained silent. If it makes the next wolfless child question the person telling them they're worthless, maybe that matters. It does. Rosanna looked at him. And I'm going to answer Celeste. Cameron raised an eyebrow. I'll offer support, Rosanna added quickly. With boundaries. Good. Holding resentment forever won't heal me. Cameron smiled. You've changed. We've changed. Rosanna corrected him. I didn't do this alone. She looked around the gardens. You, Nidita, the pack. Cameron tilted his head. Who are you now? Rosanna recognized the question. 6 months earlier, she would have had no answer. Today she did. I'm Luna of the Royal Pack. She smiled. I'm your mate. Cameron's eyes softened. I'm Wolfless. Rosanna continued. And powerful anyway. She looked toward the palace. I'm still learning. A quiet laugh. I make mistakes constantly. That is very true. Rosanna elbowed him. Cameron laughed. I'm healing. Rosanna finished. And sometimes I get to help other people heal. She looked at him. I'm all of those things. Cameron kissed her temple. Perfect. I'm not perfect. For me. He smiled. For this pack. His arms went around her. And most importantly, Rosanna waited. You're home. Even 6 months later, that word could tighten her chest. Home. She had spent 17 years with no place where her existence came without conditions. Now she had a palace she had never wanted. 500 wolves who looked to her for guidance. A mate who knew her completely. A future that did not resemble a sentence. I love you. The words still felt precious even after being spoken hundreds of times. Rosanna leaned closer. Thank you for seeing me. Cameron tightened his arms. Thank you for choosing yourself. His voice was warm against her hair. I love you too. The gardens darkened around them. Behind them, palace windows glowed. Somewhere inside, Helen was settling into a room where she might eventually belong. Beyond royal borders, other wolfless wolves were beginning to hear stories about a Luna who had proven that limitation and worth were not the same thing. Rosanna allowed herself to be happy, completely. The impossible story had begun with humiliation. A torn dress, a royal cloak, and one powerful wolf choosing to see the person everyone else had trained themselves to overlook. For 17 years, Rosanna had lived invisible. Now she was seen. And that had changed everything. Epilogue. 1 year later, the Royal Pack Community Center opened beneath a brilliant autumn sky. Gold and crimson leaves covered the territory. Hundreds of wolves gathered outside the new building. All ranks, all ages. Representatives from more than a dozen territories had also come. The center had been designed for everyone. Literacy classrooms. A library available regardless of pack rank. Meeting spaces. Resources for wolfless wolves. Childcare. A place where the rigid hierarchies that had controlled pack society for centuries could at least be questioned. Cameron stood beside Rosanna as she cut the ceremonial ribbon. Pride was obvious in his face. The crowd cheered. Royal Pack wolves. Visitors. And an increasing number of transferred members who had come seeking the sanctuary Rosanna herself once needed. Helen stood among them. She had officially joined Royal Pack months earlier and now trained as a healer's assistant. Celeste had sent a letter that morning congratulating Rosanna and asking, cautiously, whether she might visit. After a year, she had gained enough independence from Patricia to consider traveling on her own. Even Alicia had sent a short note recognizing the center's opening. It wasn't warm, but coming from Alicia, it mattered. The past year had not been simple. Conservative alphas had resisted Cameron and Rosanna's policies. Pack transfers created political arguments. Rosanna often struggled beneath the pressure of becoming a symbol when she wanted only to be herself. But the changes reached beyond Royal Pack. Slowly, sometimes reluctantly, Northern Territory leaders had begun reconsidering old assumptions. Perhaps wolfless wolves were not automatically less valuable. Perhaps shifting ability was a poor measurement of intelligence, loyalty, compassion, or leadership. Perhaps someone who grew up outside power could see problems those inside it had learned to ignore. It was not a revolution. Not yet. But it was movement. That evening, once the celebration ended, Rosanna returned to her favorite place. The library. During the year, she had expanded several sections: resources for wolfless wolves, Omega leadership, pack history viewed beyond traditional hierarchy. Cameron found her there, as he usually did. Happy? He settled into the chair beside her. Rosanna considered the question. 1 year earlier, she would have been afraid to admit happiness, as though naming it might tempt the universe to take it away. Now she smiled. Yes. Cameron took her hand. His thumb moved over the Luna's ring. I'm happy. Good. He leaned closer. Because you earned every piece of it. Rosanna shook her head. We earned it. Cameron raised an eyebrow. Partnership, remember? She smiled. This life doesn't work without you when I'm overwhelmed. It doesn't work without a pack willing to follow while I'm still learning. Rosanna looked toward the shelves. It doesn't work unless people are willing to consider that old traditions may not be the only possible traditions. True partnership. Cameron nodded. The thing Alphas and Lunas were probably supposed to have before hierarchy became more important than connection. They sat quietly. Outside the library, royal territory moved through another ordinary evening. The community center hosted its first programs. Pack members worked, studied, raised children, trained, healed, argued, laughed, and lived. The bond connected them all. And somewhere within those invisible threads sat Rosanna Friedman. No longer the girl beneath everyone's notice. No longer the orphan kneeling on marble while someone searched for imaginary dirt. No longer the wolfless servant told that limitation meant worthlessness. Rosanna Friedman, Luna of the Royal Pack. Mate to the Alpha King. Living proof that sometimes the person everyone dismisses is simply the person no one has bothered to truly see. For years, Rosanna had been told girls like her did not receive fairy tale endings. They had been wrong.